and how things roll here, maybe by lunch. So we anticipate the plaintiff could do the rebuttal tomorrow afternoon, and we can proceed with closings on Monday.
You know that works for me.
Well, I don't know why it wouldn't work for the plaintiff as well, Judge. I mean, we seriously have real concerns, given the schedule that's available next week, that if we don't do closings on Monday, that we're gonna be looking into another week, and we think everybody wants to have closure for this case, and we think that that's doable.
I mean, I certainly don't want the defense to feel like they can't present their case if they feel like they have a witness they want and or need.
No, Judge, we appreciate that. We understand the court will allow us to put on whatever testimony we think we need to put on, but we have.
Cost benefit. Cost benefit.
Yeah, we did the analysis, and we believe it's we think it's almost essential that the closings get done on Monday.
So we basically need to get in all exhibits in.
We're down to our last list, Judge.
Plaintiffs, you're going to be in a position to do your rebuttal starting mid-morning to early afternoon on Wednesday.
We're doing depots by video this afternoon. Am I understanding a number of them?
I'm trying.
Yeah, as long as we need a couple responses back. We have 2 live witnesses today, Judge. I'm sorry.
Dr. Alexander.
Dr. Alexander this morning. Dr. Dolan is after lunch. We don't anticipate either of them being extremely lengthy. Again,
We should have done published depots.
we should be able to publish deps this morning, and then the rest of the afternoon would be deps. We don't have that many depositions left. We have 2.
I just ruled on Padron this
Background,
morning.
which is very short, you could tell. I mean, that's probably 10 minutes, maybe. And then we have O'Leary Johnson, which is 30 some minutes.
Yeah, 33 minutes.
And we have Dr. Wyndham.
So my assistant will be circulating the Padron rulings. Are there any other deposition designations I'm going to have to rule on?
Well, we have designated last night some deposition designations from the plaintiff's step. I can't imagine that there's going to be any objections to those. We're waiting for their response on that. And if they can get back to us at lunch, then we can have those clips ready as well for this afternoon. But again, 15 minutes most for those. So I think we're in good shape, Judge. The 2 witnesses tomorrow, again, will be here first thing.
So plaintiffs, you need to be ready to go with your rebuttal case tomorrow.
You won't see much of me this afternoon, Judge, but yeah, I'll get it together for that.
And we need to know who the rebuttal is going to be, Judge, as soon as possible.
Well, I can tell you that Maya Kowalski will testify, probably Jack Kowalski, Dr. Richards, Dr. Corcoran, and we may have a brief excerpt from the deposition of Kathy Beatty, and I think that's about it right now. Anybody else? Oh, if we can get him Dr. Newberger. And we're gonna have to just keep calling and find out. We have not been able to get his status in the past 48 hours, but we'll keep trying, and if he can appear by Zoom, we'd like to bring him in too.
Well, I just want to make sure we are not trying the Chapter 39 case, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Judge, we have concerns, given the list they've given, that it's going to be true rebuttal and not a retry of their case.
I hear you, I agree, and they're also, that 2.5 hour limit is a hard and fast,
Oh, yeah.
and we're not just calling people to call them to say the same thing over and over again.
No.
Well, Judge,
They're all
repeat what they already
responses, too.
said. I mean, you're hearing the defense's concern, that they just want to have the last word and therefore going to call it rebuttal, when it's just to come up and say things they already testified to.
I hear you, I've said what I can say now, I can't make a ruling until I actually have a... Now, as far as directed verdict motions, let's time shift those.
Okay.
So when the defense finishes its case, I want to immediately go into the rebuttal, and we will shift any sort of plaintiff's directed verdict motions to later. And then when we complete the plaintiff's you know, my goal is, let's say we finish on Wednesday afternoon, we will then time shift until after we send the jury home, and then do any DV motions, and then we'll get back into jury instructions Wednesday afternoon.
Understood.
Understood.
Mr. Hunter?
I was just wondering, what was going to have any proceedings on Thursday morning?
We're going to do jury instructions Thursday morning. And, you know, we're going to start at 8:15 on jury instructions. I would absolutely love to be out of here by 10:30 because I really need to be someplace else, but this will take priority, and I'll stay until we finish what we need to finish. But hopefully we can finish jury instructions by mid-morning on Thursday, which will give everybody 3.5 days for closing arguments. Let's not leave today without talking about rules for closing arguments.
Yes, it's almost like I want to write it out and submit it to the court to get a pre-ruling. It's going to be tough, Judge, but we'll do our best.
We're going to talk about the ground rules, because I know you're going to have this weekend to work on them.
Because it's punitive damages too, so.
We're going to talk about it before we leave today.
I have a motion related to our rebuttal. I'd like the court to reconsider the Williams ruling for Elena Kushner in light of Sally Smith's testimony that she never wears a lab coat. Elena Kushner and her husband are in a NECA action, and there is a companion state court action in which the defense is actually defending it. Right now it's up on appeal to the First District Court of Appeals. But the point is, they know the Kushners. And Elena Kushner, her testimony would simply be, I came in, and it will be very, very similar to, if not identical to the situation with the Kowalskis, and Kathy Beatty came in a white lab coat and asked a number of questions before anybody identified her. Nobody came in from the hospital to identify her. Nobody told them anything about it, and Sally Smith didn't tell anything about it, which corroborates our evidence and refutes Sally Smith's testimony. I don't think it could have come in until Sally Smith said, I never wear a lab coat in these circumstances. But because she did say that, then it becomes relevant and material to rebut that statement, and between the issue between who remembers what, it would be probative. So obviously she's only a 5 to 10 minute witness, but we would like the court to consider that.
Judge, I don't think there's anything that happened here in court that would cause the court to revisit his ruling.
Let me think about that a little bit more. What's next?
Our concern, Judge, with the next witness is that, again, I know the court doesn't like these things brought up at the last minute, but neither do I know what they're going to have Dr. Alexander testify to, and the basis for this is his report is pretty specific about Chapter 39 things. His affidavit is very specific about Chapter 39 things, and in his deposition, after we asked that many questions, I mean, the question was, and Doctor, in the discussion we have had about your anticipated testimony and what you'll be asked to testify about in front of a jury, you have no issues of what we talked about and what's been disclosed, right? And he went on. Now that is a summation of about 4 pages of me asking, are there any other opinions beyond those expressed within your report?
I don't understand what you're asking me. Is he opining that Beata had Munchausen by proxy?
Well, yeah, in this part he does. In the report, he concurs with that, and I don't think that's.
I think from the discussion yesterday, the defense wasn't going there.
Well, may we inquire of the defense as to exactly what issues
Didn't we
Dr.
have
Randall's
this
going to talk
discussion
about? Alexander, excuse me.
Mr. Anderson, didn't we have this discussion yesterday?
Yes.
I don't recall it, Judge, if we did. The specifics of the issues?
Well, maybe you had left and it was Mr. Whitney was flying the plane for the plaintiffs.
Could be. I mean, I just need some confirmation then. If you want me to ask Nick, I will, but if they can tell me, it'd be even faster.
I do have a sense of deja vu. The testimony is going to center on Sally Smith's conduct and the propriety of that conduct within the parameters of her medical directorate of the CPT. We're not going in, I may make a proffer regarding Munchausen's. He was recruited as a Munchausen's expert way back when. And that was indeed the focus of the testimony that he was expected to give when he was initially recruited. I'm not going there. I'm strictly going to talk about the propriety of Sally Smith's conduct. That's it.
There we go.
Yeah, and my concern, and I wish I had been here, I apologize for not being there, I was preparing for this eventuality. But nothing in his.
All the jurors are here now, so just to let you know. All the jurors are now here, so.
We need to get to exhibit.
I know, so here's my, we had a discussion about this yesterday. I was satisfied with the discussion. I trust in your ability to stand up and not object or ask to approach the bench. And I think at that point, we are where we're at. Let's deal with exhibit. Is there anything else before we go to
No,
exhibit?
I was just going to observe that there's a couple of tightrope points that may have me coming forward.
That's fine.
I would appreciate that, counsel, before asking.
Let's go to exhibits, please.
Judge,
Ms.
you should have a current list. I believe this,
It's only 2 pages.
and I believe it concludes our exhibits, Judge. The first one is for proffer only. We understand the court has ruled that that's not admissible. It's the policy that we wanted to get in. The court denied us being able to admit that.
What number are we talking about?
I'm sorry, 3019, 1 to 14. It should be the first one on your list.
3019, pages 1 through 14.
Yes, we want that marked and to proffer it.
The court will mark, but without, but will not admit 3019-1 through 14.
3023, 1 to 56 is the Arnold Palmer Hospital that need to be redacted. I'm going to hand to Mr. Whitney. What I've done is tab and highlight what we would redact, and then if he could just let us know by lunch if they're satisfied with those redactions, then we will seek to admit that after lunch.
What's next?
3035, 1 to 26, it's Nemours Children's Hospital records regarding the transfer.
This was 2016, or was this, what was?
2016, sorry, it's
When in 2016?
October, and I think it also includes the November attempt to transfer to Nemours.
And this is the transfer that never happened.
That's correct, Your Honor.
And are there documents or statements in there that we previously addressed to which we've had some lengthy hearings on?
I don't think so, Judge. If you like, we'll take a closer look at those, but I don't believe there's anything in there. I don't know if the plaintiff has reviewed it.
Is that something that you need this morning, or can I
Well,
look
we
at?
can skip that.
Yeah.
Okay, 3054 Venice High School records, we redacted page 11, which was the page that had all of the,
The RN comment?
yeah, let's, Clay, can you bring up 3054, page 11 specifically? There it is.
And we've removed any sort of social security or telephone number?
I think we had already done that, Judge.
Last time we discussed this, we just weren't certain whether or not the rest of the pages, the remaining 15 pages.
No, the rest of the pages are grades, but
Okay.
feel free to review.
Well, if that's the case, no objection.
And we have looked to make sure there's no social security number and,
We will double check, but I'm pretty confident we
okay,
will
so
double check.
ultimately that's going to come in, but let's just wait for the confirmation.
Uh, 3085.
Oh, yeah, that's the whole EEG video.
Oh. So, 3085 is the entire EEG video. So we're not going to play it, but it is all of the EEG clips from when she was in the room.
So it's a 2-day.
It's on a what do you call them? I call them pen drives, but whatever.
Probably a real thick one. Is there two?
Yeah, that's for your honor. They were previously admitted to my records on that.
No, we previously admitted little clips, but
Right.
she's talking about 48 hours.
Oh, okay.
This is the 48 hours.
Any objection to 3085?
No, yeah.
I'm, no,
And so the court will receive 3085. Does the clerk have that external drive, or is that something that's coming?
Yeah, only before I looked.
It was the original one that was provided to the clerks.
Okay, so the clerk already has 3085. Okay. Court receives 3085.
3101, it's a video of Maya ice skating in January of 2019. It's about 20 seconds long.
Let's roll tape.
We didn't slow-mo it, just how it was how it was produced to us by the plaintiffs.
No objection.
Court receives 3101 into evidence.
3192. It's an email from Beata Kowalski to Dr. Kirkpatrick on November 6, 2016.
May I see it, please?
The importance of this, Judge, is that she is advising Dr. Kirkpatrick that Maya's relapse started in September, with it progressively increasing and declining slowly over the next 30 days, which is right before the admission to All Children's Hospital.
And I see we've got Deborah Salisbury's name on it.
Oh, I thought we deleted that. We'll remove Deborah Salisbury.
Plaintiffs, what say you?
There's an attachment that's missing.
We just want the,
Well,
We're
can we
putting
pull it
in
back
the-
up?
yeah. I don't know what that, forwarded in a letter of Dr. Hannon. That was the subject matter, Judge. If they want to put it in the letter, we just simply want the admission that's contained in this email regarding Maya's condition before she entered the hospital.
We'd like to see the letter to sign of completeness, and then as far as this email, if it's completed with the attachment, we have no objection to this email.
Judge, I don't think we're required to put in the attachment.
Well, can we see the attachment, please?
I don't know that I even have the attachment, Judge.
Should be the next number.
I don't think it is. We'll look, 3192-0002, but I don't believe we have the attachment. Maybe we do.
Yeah, we just have what they produced us.
Yeah, this was produced to us by the plaintiff, so if they have it.
And we have a completeness objection.
Judge, it's just for the statement contained regarding the plaintiff's, Mrs. Kowalski's statement regarding Maya's condition. There's no reference to the attachment in the substance of the statement.
I'm going to go ahead and admit 3192 if the plaintiffs, because I agree with Ms. Croyles, this is a document that originated from the plaintiffs. If you have the letter and you want to put it in, then I'm certainly probably going to do it as part of this is the complete.
I understand.
For now, I'll let in 3192, page 1.
320001 to 3. We have the original and then we have a redacted version. We want to put in the redacted. So this is the redacted. It's an email from Beata Kowalski to Dr. Kirkpatrick and his response. So her email continues on the second page. And then Dr. Kirkpatrick's response regarding Dr. Chopra. And if the court wants to see the original, we can put that up.
Yes.
This Dr. Chopra evaluation was done in the context of Chapter 39. So this is getting into the family's motion to the court to have Maya Kowalski evaluated by Dr. Chopra. We'd also like to see the unredacted version.
Sure. Be happy to show you the unredacted version.
But we think as it is, it's a Chapter 39 issue.
But, except Dr. Chopra testified here.
As a retained expert, not in his role in Chapter 39.
He only examined her once. So it's referring to that examination.
Well, let me see page 3, and then we'll see the unredacted version.
Okay.
Well, we also have a hearsay objection for Dr. Kirkpatrick.
Okay. So I've now seen the redacted. Can I see the unredacted version, please?
Do you want the redacted and unredacted next to each other, Judge?
No, that's
Okay.
And next page.
So we redacted all the things that we thought were referencing the Chapter 39 issues.
Next page, please.
And the GoFundMe stuff. That's what that is. Oh, no, it's not GoFundMe.
I agree with the plaintiffs that the context in which these statements were made has to do with a defense of the dependency court action. I'm going to exclude the redacted version of 3200 pages 1 through 3. What's next?
Let's skip to 323980. This is for proffer only, Judge. It's a page in Beata Kowalski's journal where she comments on giving ketamine intravenously.
Okay, the court will mark for identification purposes only 3239-80. It is not being admitted at this time.
Yeah.
Mr. Shapiro wanted to address that proffer briefly.
Very briefly, Your Honor, on direct examination of Maya Kowalski before this court on October 9th.
Well, then let's put it up, because if it's something more than a proffer, then... Okay, so Mr. Shapiro?
Yeah, I know that court's already ruled that the references to IV ketamine being given through the port won't come in, but I wanted to make sure for the appellate record I could perfect this proffer, that on direct examination of Maya Kowalski on October 9th, 2023, in front of this court, Mr. Anderson directly elicited this testimony at page 85 of the transcript. He said, "Before we go on, by this point, did you know what having ketamine infusion was, the feeling of ketamine inside you?" Answer, yes. "Were you able to tell throughout this period after you had started having them with Dr. Kirkpatrick, Dr. Cantu, and Dr. Hanna, were you able to tell when your body was receiving ketamine?" Answer, yes. "Okay, then tell the jury whether, to the best of your knowledge, and for everything you saw, heard, felt, your mom ever gave you IV ketamine at home." Answer, never. Through the IV, no. And then the question was asked again. Okay, so it was never intravenous, only for oral purposes. Right, never through the IV. Question, you never had IV ketamine at home? No, at home, no. So again, that would be an additional basis since the plaintiff opened the door to this in their direct examination. The jury's been left with the direct impression that this never happened, and I don't want to go through all of this again, but we believe that it's prejudicial to the defense that they were allowed to elicit this testimony in direct examination and put in front of the jury that this never happened when we have what we believe is rock solid evidence that it did, especially as they wave around their IV ketamine chart. So that's our proffer on this exhibit in issue.
the Dr. Sally Smith chart?
No, the one that they showed yesterday to Dr. Levy saying, here's all the IV ketamine she ever got during this period of time when we have evidence, as seen on the screen, that, quote, ketamine IV given out of desperation, pain was unbearable. The plaintiff opened the door to this on the direct exam, and we believe the defense is
No, my understanding is the chart that they showed yesterday, actually, its genesis was Dr. Sally Smith.
No,
She didn't create that?
no, that was created by the plaintiff as a
Okay.
demonstrative.
Well,
But there is an underlying chart of Dr. Sally Smith that correlates directly to that. You're correct.
in one of her reports. And that's where we traditionally, defense and plaintiff, have been using that determination rather than going back through in depositions. On multiple occasions, the defense and the plaintiffs have used that chart.
Well, going back to the IV ketamine, I again will say, since the moment I stepped into this case, in I think the summer of 2021, this IV ketamine issue has existed. I continue to have substantial concerns about the unfair use of this concept, and it's, the unfair nature of it vastly outweighs any sort of probative value. So I will continue to exclude, and so I will not permit into evidence 3239-80. Did I get those numbers correct?
You did.
Okay,
Your Honor.
but that page will be marked for ID.
Okay.
I understand it's excluded, it's like a proffer, but for the clerk that may eventually read this in this context, ketamine IV, again, through the prescriptions, it's been confirmed by the pharmacist that the oral ketamine was prescribed in ketamine IV form. So this note does nothing to prove up that it was administered to the court at home. It simply does not say that.
And say that when you said the clerk, you meant the law clerk / staff attorney.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah.
3310, 1 to 30 is Dr. Cantu's billing records.
Let's see them.
It's Dr. Cantu and the hospital that billed her for the next
Can
job.
we,
The first ones I think are the booster, and then later on in the package is the ones for the initial.
is it all in English or is there Spanish?
I think there might be some. I think it's in English and Spanish. It's a mix.
Spanglish.
The numbers are in English.
Yeah, we object. So the court will recall that previously we had raised the issue of the Kowalski family having to sell their rental home in order to finance the treatments of Kirkpatrick and Cantu. And the defense objected to us introducing that. So now to put in billing records from a time, we're not claiming damages for Dr. Cantu's treatment. I'm not sure what the relevance is.
Be happy to explain.
If it is relevant, then we're going to come back in rebuttal and talk about all the sacrifices the family had to make in order to fund this treatment.
Judge, they already put in evidence their requests that the church do fundraisers for them. But beyond that, that's not the purpose. The purpose here is to show that Dr. Cantu makes a lot of money doing these comas, and it goes towards the jury's consideration of his bias with respect to the procedures that he performs.
Well, what are his bills versus what are the facilities bills? And I don't speak Spanish, so I'm unfortunately not going to be able to translate these documents.
Mr.
Your Honor, he testified that these bills were for everything.
Well, but if the point is to somehow impeach or contend that Dr. Cantu is biased, what do the facilities charges have any relevance at all I mean, wouldn't it just be Dr. Cantu's professional services?
Yeah. Clay, can I ask Clay to scroll through, please? Can you keep going? Can you go, please? So we can keep going, please. All right, this would be the hospital bill. So we can remove the hospital bill if that's the court's concern.
In my mind, if the purpose of this is to say that Dr. Cantu is receiving a lot of money, then it would seem anything besides his own personal bill is out.
All right.
Now, I still have to address Mr. Whitney's concerns. So is 9 through the balance, is that not Cantu's?
No, it's not that organized because it's by I think it's, call there were 2 trips. I think it's by 2 trips. We'll have to reorganize the pages, Judge, and we'll give it a new exhibit number and deal with that tomorrow then.
What's next?
33151.
All documents produced in response to a request.
No, it should have been changed. That's how we got it, but it's via Mrs. Kowalski's email. We'll change that description, Judge, for the exhibit list. It's Mrs. Kowalski's email to Dr. Cantu. Note that it's October 3rd, 2016 that she sends the email. And then his response on October 4th, 2016.
Our objections are hearsay as to Dr. Cantu's statements, relevance as to this would again be some sort of backdoor effort to establish that Beata Kowalski was, I don't know, infusing these drugs or obtaining a pump without a prescription from a physician. There's no evidence in the record that any of these drugs that Dr. Cantu identifies here, morphine, clonidine, ropicaine, were ever administered through a pump as of March 10th, 2016.
This is October 3rd, 2016.
Okay, same idea. There's no evidence on October 3rd, 2016 that there was ever a pump, a prescription written for a pump. They want to use this to, again, establish Munchausen by proxy, and that Beata Kowalski was abusing her daughter with all of these drugs simply by asking a question of Dr. Cantu.
Judge, do I need to respond?
Yes, because I'm about ready to exclude it, so I'll give you another chance.
Yes, because this is talking about an internal pump. The jury's heard all about, it says, could you please send me the info for the combo drug for internal pump? We'll take out Dr. Cantu's response if that's concerning the court, but this goes to, the court may recall, there was all this conversation when Beata Kowalski was in the hospital about wanting an intrathecal pump. That would be an internal pump. This goes to support the fact that that was her inquiry, that was her concern. That's why she didn't want the transfer to Nemours in October.
And it goes for the same condition.
And it goes to the concern that she had for her daughter and her condition as of October 3rd, 2016, when they are testifying that she was doing great and or the expert did, and that we're the ones that caused her to decline.
The court has already told the jury a couple times, I'm going to tell them again, that the hospital had reasonable cause to make the call of the abuse hotline. I see this as nothing more than a piling on of saying Beata Kowalski is a bad person. That's how I'm reading it. 403, it's out.
Okay, Judge, but just for the record, the plaintiff's interpretation of what they think we're doing is not accurate, and this goes to the condition of Maya Kowalski before she goes to the hospital. But I understand the court's
There's a lot of evidence of what Maya Kowalski's condition was, and so there's also a cumulative nature here. Now, we're past 9 o'clock,
Is
so
the jury here, Judge?
the jury is here.
Okay.
So can we put a pause and?
We can.
Okay. Anything before we bring in the jury?
What is the order of witnesses? I'm sorry if I missed that. I know Dr. Major's after lunch. Dr. Dolan. I'm sorry, Dr. Dolan's after lunch. The witnesses this morning?
We're doing Dr. Alexander first, and then there'll be, I believe, a deposition or two, and then.
The nurse cook is not testifying?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow now? Okay, thank you.
Let's bring in the jury. Please be seated, everyone. Now, with all that orange and black, I know that we are honoring Sarasota High School. I want to confirm while you're away, you did not discuss this case amongst yourselves. You did no investigation. You received no information. Is that all correct? And no one approached you about this case. Is that correct? And you saw no media. Is that correct? So in addition to all the orange and blue that I know that you are loving, the orange and black from Sarasota High, I feel like you just know that I went to high school there and are honoring Sarasota High, as well as the University of Florida. Okay. Let's go ahead and shift. I know today's Halloween, but let's go ahead and shift to the business of why we are here. The defense, can you please call your next witness?
Yes, sir, Your Honor, speaking of the University of Florida, we call Dr. Randall Alexander.
Stand here, face the clerk, and raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. All right, come around this way.
Police Court. Just tell us your name, please.
It's Randall Alexander, and Randall is R-E-N-D-E-L-L.
And what is your occupation?
I'm professor and chief of Division of Child Protection and Forensic Pediatrics at the University of Florida in Jacksonville.
All right,
I'm a child abuse pediatrician.
very good. Could you tell the jury where you obtained your training to be a pediatrician, first of all?
Well, I got a bachelor's degree at Michigan State University in 1972. I then went to the University of Michigan, got a master's degree in 1974 in psychology, worked on a PhD, but I went to medical school at Wayne State University in Detroit got my MD degree in 1980. I did a standard 3-year pediatrics residency in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is Michigan State's largest clinical campus. And then I did an additional year working on community pediatrics fellowship, more informal at that time, where I was working on child abuse issues, and also being a chief resident. And then I got my first job at the University of Iowa.
All right, sure. And at the University of Iowa, what was your appointment?
Oh, I started out as an assistant professor and eventually became an associate professor.
All right, and in what field?
It was in pediatrics. I was working in Division of Developmental Disabilities and doing some work with that, with children with a wide range of physical disabilities. We were kind of the state resource for school issues, learning problems and things. And also I was doing a lot of child abuse work at the university, state and national.
All right, sure. And where did you go from Iowa?
I went to Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta for 6 years.
All right, sure. And were you involved with child abuse pediatrics at that point?
Oh, yes.
All right. Could you describe for the jury how you became involved in child abuse pediatrics?
I think in medical school, there were some interesting cases when I was on the pediatrics rotation. It's not your standard look in somebody's ears and see an infection, which is satisfying, but there's more complication with child abuse. I did a pediatric radiology rotation with 4 of some of the top radiologists in the country working on child abuse issues. And so I think it sparked some of my interest there. And in my residency, there was more of that. And ultimately, my 3rd-year residency, I did a month with working with a guy at Michigan State, Ray Helfer, who was probably the premier child abuse pediatrician in the world at that time. And then I took off from there.
All right. So what did you do at Morehouse State? What was your teaching interest?
It was Morehouse School of Medicine, sorry.
I'm sorry.
I did a little bit, I did about a day a week of general pediatrics, but most of the time I was working in child abuse issues. I worked statewide, got some money from the legislature trying to put together a bit of a network with the various cities in it. Georgia got some money for some equipment, for instance, and was seeing cases.
Did there come a point at which your career path led you to Florida?
Well, I was being recruited over several years to come down there, and I showed up there in 2004, and I was the statewide medical director where I oversaw all the child protection teams, which is currently 22 teams. And so I was the boss of the medical directors in each of their different locales.
Okay. And how long did you hold that position?
10.5 years.
All right, sir. Did there come a point at which you became board certified in child abuse pediatrics?
Yes. Child abuse pediatrics is especially came about, and the first wave of people that were child abuse pediatricians formally, as a formal subspecialty, was in 2009. And at that time you had to have worked over half-time, at least for 5 years in child abuse, and then you had to pass a national exam. And I did.
And then you continued to work as the statewide medical director for the child protection team program?
I did for 10.5 years. Now I'm in Jacksonville, but I'm in charge of the Tallahassee and its 8 counties child protection team, and Jacksonville and its 8 counties child protection team. So 16 counties.
All right, sir. And in that connection, you're still working as a member of both these child protection teams?
Well, I am. I was on call this weekend, and I'm on call tonight.
All right, sure.
So when I get back to Jacksonville, I may have to see patients in the middle of the night, although I hope not.
Okay. Let me backtrack a little bit into your credentials here. What is the American Professional Society on the Abuse of Children?
What we call APSAC. It is the largest, somewhat the only, multidisciplinary professional organization in child abuse. And so it spans not just medicine, but psychology and social work and police and a whole variety of people that deal with child abuse in one form or another.
And have you been a member of that organization?
I'm a member. I'm on the board, have been in Florida. I was on the board and at one point was the president in Georgia, and I've been on the board twice nationally.
All right. Have you had occasion to contribute to the literature of your profession regarding the subject of child abuse?
Yes.
And do you have any estimate of how many papers you've published?
Oh, gosh. Well, it's over 50 in terms of paper publications. Books and chapters, 70, 80. I would have to look at my CV
All right.
on that. I'm sorry.
Okay. And have you had occasion to lecture on the subject of child abuse?
Around the world, yes.
Yes, sir. And do you have any estimate of how many times you've been asked to lecture on that subject?
I'm sure it's at least 300. Might be a fair bit more than that.
Okay. And at the University of Florida today, what is your role in teaching child abuse?
Okay, so I'm the division chief. I have about 50 or some people that work for me in my several locations. I see kids. I'm on the call schedule. And I also have administrative duties supervising people. We have the only child abuse fellowship in Florida, and I'm the program director for that. So I teach and help with any of our fellows, people who are pediatricians but are trying to spend 3 years to be a child abuse pediatrician. And then I work on some prevention issues and try to sneak in some occasional publications.
All right, sir. Now, do you do you know Dr. Sally Smith?
I do. I was her boss for quite a long time.
Okay. During your tenure as statewide head of child protection program, you were her boss?
I was. That'd be 2004 to I think probably early 2015.
Okay. And during 2016, you did not hold that role?
That's right.
Okay. During 2016, were you in your present position?
Yes.
All right. Have you and I had occasion to meet and discuss this case?
Yes.
Okay. Did we meet for the first time last night?
In person, I think that could be, yeah.
Okay.
I think we may have done Zoom or telephone or something before that.
All right. And have you been paid, or have we agreed to pay you a fee for your consultative and testimonial services?
Not me, the University of Florida. It's not any money I get, but the University of Florida will be billing you, yes.
All right, very good. Now let me turn your attention, if I can, to the subject of the child protection teams in general. Your background suggests that you have had occasion to become familiar with how the Florida Child Protection Team program works. Is that true?
Well, sure. I mean, I was leading it for a considerable time, and I still have to teach it to all my trainees and new staff and everything. Yes.
Is the Child Protection Team program something that is created by Florida statute?
It is. It's had several revisions, but since it first started in 1978.
All right. Could you describe for the jury what the Child Protection Team program consists of and what its function is?
Sure.
Objection, relevance in 39.
He can answer that. I assume we're going to.
Yes, sir.
Florida, uniquely in the world, is divided into 22 zones. And in these zones, if you will, we have a child protection team. So we don't work just out of a hospital. So, for instance, in Jacksonville, we have several hospitals we work for. Under Florida law, first of all, we're paid through the Department of Health, and we have to conform to a whole bunch of rules. It's somewhat of a public-private partnership, so in our particular case, the University of Florida holds the contract our Jacksonville College of Medicine. In, say, Pinellas, it would be a nonprofit. And most of the places in the state, it's some sort of a social services nonprofit. But there's, I think, 5 of the 22 teams are University of South Florida, Miami, and a couple of the UF ones. By law, we are there to assist the Department of Children and Families in their investigations. We're medically led with a medical director, but we have other medical people, all told probably over 100, and a couple hundred what we call case coordinators or social workers, if you will, psychologists, team attorney. And we see under law, they specify, here's the kids you're supposed to see. They're called mandatory. So we see these kids by statute, but we also see other children because there's some that need to be seen that the law can't think of everything. And we write reports, and we help to decide, is there even child abuse in the first place? And if it is, what is it, and what our recommendations would be. And we have a number of quirky things that you only find here in Florida and not any place else in the world.
It's sustained.
Let me try to reframe another question if I could. Doctor, can you tell the jury whether the function of a child protection team includes the education and outreach to the community and professionals regarding the subject of child abuse, its awareness and prevention?
Objection relevancy in 39 again.
I'd like to approach on this, Judge.
Sure. Hunter's going to rephrase the question.
Doctor, in your experience, is outreach to the community and the professional community to provide education and awareness regarding child abuse prevention and recognition part of the function of a child protection team?
It's a contract standard. We actually have to provide a certain number of hours. The teams do, according to the Department of Health contract standards. So the answer is not just yes, but it's required.
Now, at our request, or I guess I should say at the request of counsel, can we approach on that just a minute, Judge? I'm sorry. At the request of counsel, have you reviewed some material regarding the case of Maya Kowalski, this case?
Yes.
Okay. And can you just give the jury a general description of what you've reviewed?
Medical records from a whole variety of sources. I'm sure at least 40 more various transcripts of depositions, particularly those are the main things that I recall. There's various other miscellaneous stuff, communications. Maybe the mother had emails and things. I think at some point I'd actually seen some videos.
All right. Let me ask you specifically, have you reviewed the materials that Dr. Sally Smith obtained and accumulated in her role in this case?
Yes.
And have you reviewed the medical records of Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
Yes.
And have you reviewed various medical records regarding the care rendered to Maya Kowalski by a number of other physicians?
Yes.
And have you reviewed you indicated you reviewed somewhere north of 40 some odd depositions. Did those include Dr. Sally Smith's several depositions?
Yes.
And have you also reviewed a transcript for testimony in this case
yes.
from the last few days?
Yes.
All right. Based on your review of this material, have you arrived at any opinion or conclusion regarding whether Dr. Smith's conduct in this case was within her role as a child protection team medical director?
I have an opinion, yes.
And what is that opinion?
That it is. That I think that she was following what I would expect the CPT physician to do.
All right. And now, would you tell us the basis for your opinion in that regard?
Well, it's the way we work with a child protection team. I'm not sure on your question. In terms of she was contacted, she started looking into the case. There were several reports called in, one that was finally accepted, and then she went ahead and did a report, looked at the case in depth, looked at multiple sources and wrote a CPT report, which is what we're supposed to do. And then she was available to help, with any questions anyone had.
All right, sir. Let me ask you several questions more specifically about that.
Objection, Your Honor. Report.
I'm not going to talk about the report.
I don't think there's a pending question at this moment. So why don't we hear the next question?
Sure.
Okay, you made reference to Dr. Smith being contacted, and I believe that took place in a phone call from Dr. Tepa Sanchez initially.
Right.
Is that type of phone call something that CPT members typically receive from physicians in the community?
Objection, Your Honor.
Court's going to overrule the objection.
Do you remember the question, or would you like for me to?
I'd like it repeated. Thank you.
Okay. We made reference to a call that Dr. Tepa Sanchez initially made to Dr. Smith regarding Maya Kowalski, and for reference, I think the proof is that it occurred on or about October 8th of 2023. Was based on your review of the materials you reviewed, is that call the sort of contact from a hospital staff member that a CPT medical director might typically receive?
Yes.
Okay, would you explain that, please?
Well, I've had those calls. I just had a staff member have that call yesterday. It's not limited to just child abuse. I mean, doctors, we talk to each other and say, hey, can I run something by you, and is this something that I should pursue or not pursue? And so that would be a pretty typical sort of thing. It's not the same as I've made a report to DCF and now let's do a formal evaluation. This is the stuff, if you will, where you're trying to figure out, is there enough here that I should even pursue this?
Okay. And once Dr. Smith became involved with an investigation, was it within her duties as a medical director of a child protection team to consult with the medical team regarding the patient's status and condition going forward?
Also legal conclusion, objection.
Overall. To determine, what advice they can give as far as is this a child abuse situation, you don't have to prove it. You just have to say, is there enough here to make a report? Are you suspicious? And so that would be within the scope. Again, for us to do formal reports, start interviewing and doing exams and everything else, that requires that DCF reports made to a hotline and accepted, and then we get involved.
In reviewing the materials that you have gone through, and there seems to have been quite a passel of them, did you see any indication that Dr. Smith was functioning as part of the treatment team for Maya Kowalski?
No, I think she was given some advice on occasion, but she wasn't a treating physician, no.
All right. Is giving advice on occasion, as you described, part of the function of a child protection team medical director in a situation such as this?
It is.
And tell us why that is.
Well, we don't just drop the case. It's sort of like, thank you for the thing, here's a report, and goodbye. I mean, we're still the resource in the community to help out for things. Not the treating physician, because then you'd have to sign medical charts and have your name there and all that. That we don't do that. But to be able to help people as they're trying to figure things out, yeah, you can give us a call.
Is that part, in your experience, as a current CPT medical director and past statewide medical director, is that part of the job, so to speak, of a child protection team medical director with respect to a sheltered child such as Maya Kowalski?
Yes, I mean, it can be. It depends if they have any questions. In essence, can we be of assistance?
What other functions did Dr. Smith serve in this case with reference to Ms. Kowalski and coordination of her care?
Well, she did a CPT evaluation. She was available to people at the hospital and in the community for any questions that they had as to what she thought was going on or advice that she could give. I think it was pretty much it.
All right. I believe that's all I have right now. Thank you, sir.
Doctor, did I hear you correctly that you have two roles? You have a role as a pediatrician and then a role with CPT?
I have lots of roles.
Okay.
What you're saying is
Jobs.
What you're saying is true, but there's a lot more to it.
Okay. How many hats do you have? How many hats do you wear, I should say?
Well, so my division is about a $7 million operation. We have probably 15 or more funding sources, and I'm in the administration of a number of those, so I have that hat. I help with Wilson Children's Hospital, which is our children's hospital in Jacksonville. As I said, I'm the fellowship program director. Just in the university, I see children. I deal with Daytona and Tallahassee teams, and then I'm involved nationally and statewide with a number of things. I chair the Child Abuse Committee, for instance, for the Florida Chapter American Academy of Pediatrics, and I'm on the board now for that organization. And
these are all jobs?
A number
of
of other things.
These are all jobs? I mean, like jobs you get paid for?
I get paid by the University of Florida.
Okay. And so you have many, many jobs in addition to working for DCF.
I don't work for DCF.
Sorry, CPT.
Yeah, the Child Protection Team is, again, the University of Florida, but the funding, partial funding, comes through the Department of Health.
All right. Well, you would agree with me that Dr. Smith's role in this did not include inserting herself into the care and treatment of Maya Kowalski.
Sure.
All right. Let me show you. Can we bring up 1001-0373? And if you'll, excuse me, let's not do that one. I'm sorry, wrong one. 2116-002. Let's go to the text. 2116-002. Now, if you look at 15 down there, you see it? And that's from Sally Smith. And it's to a Paola Dees. Do you recognize her as a doctor at Johns Hopkins?
Right, in my review.
And so this is Dr. Smith talking to Dr. Dees, right? In a text.
Right.
And here, Dr. Smith is telling Dr. Dees, get her off as many meds as possible. That is not part of the role that Dr. Smith should have as an investigator, is it?
Well, she's not an investigator. To say that's really not a fair description of what we are. Second of all, if that's advice in terms of how you might handle these situations, it is her role to give advice. If she's the one that actually does it, then she'd be a treating physician. But as you pointed out, I think she's talking to someone else.
All right. Well, let's look at 116-005. And let's go down to number 35. We can. That's, 005. And let's go down to 35. We got it. Now, do you recognize this as a text in November of 2016 from Sally Smith to Paola Dees again?
Yes.
Did it come to your attention that Dr. Smith ordered or directed to be ordered a 48-hour video, if you will, surveillance video without knowledge of Maya Kowalski? Were you aware of that?
I wasn't aware that she did the order. I would imagine that some other physician did the order.
Uh-huh. And then she says here, fortunately, as a 10-year-old, she can't perform the charade effectively 24/7. Do you see that?
I do.
That's not part of the role. And what is she? Is she an investigator, a prosecutor? What is she?
Well, as you know, she's none of those. She's
What
the
is
CPT physician that's giving advice to the team.
And so you're contending that she is not part prosecutor in this role.
Well, of course she's not the prosecutor. You have to be a lawyer to do that and go to court.
And are you contending she's not an investigator?
Right. Investigator is a term we might use with police or DCF. Now, the fact that we ask questions, if you want to label it that, but we don't consider it that way in medicine.
Well, how about if she's referred to as the head of our team? Say, our child abuse team. That's not part of her role, heading up a hospital's team, is it?
I don't think the hospital has a team. The child protection team is independent of the hospital.
I'm just asking you if, in fact, doctors at the hospital referred to her as heading up their team, whatever that is, for child abuse. That's not part of her role, is it?
It's also not part of the child protection team system because we don't have such teams.
Is it part of her role or not?
Well, no, because it doesn't exist.
Let's look at 1001-0373. If you look at the bottom of this progress note when we get it up, that's 1001-0373. And if you look down here at the bottom, I think you'll see. Do you see that Dr. Smith is reviewing all of Maya's medical records? And this is some 3 weeks after Maya was put there. Do you see it?
I do.
All right. And do you see that she is now agreeing with Dr. Hart and Dr. Smith, that's Michelle Smith, that we should proceed removing Maya's port as there's no indication for her to have a CVL? Do you see that?
I do.
Deciding whether or not to take out a CVL, a port, in a child's chest, that's not part of her role, is it?
No, she'd have to be the treating physician to actually write the order.
I understand, but becoming involved to the point where you're directing it, that's not part of her role either.
She's not directing it unless she's writing the order.
Mm-hmm.
So she is giving advice as to what she thinks she should do in this case based on her review.
All right. So let's take a look at 2277-068. And we're discussing here the video, I believe. And you see down here that Dr. Smith on the risk management. I'll represent to you, this is a note from risk management.
And you see below that it says okay from Risk.
I do.
And you see below that videotaping?
Right.
And you see no order.
Right.
All right. So in this instance, if there was no order and Risk Management is looking to Sally Smith, that's not part of her role either, is it?
You know, I don't know what this note really means,
Okay.
so I can't really answer your question.
All right. So Sally Smith being a member of various of the hospital's committees, that's not part of her role, is it? I'm not asking about being a doctor. I'm just asking about her role for CPT.
CPT doesn't ask that you be on any committees at any hospital.
And Sally Smith worked for you for over a decade, right?
As I was the statewide medical director, so yes, she did work for me.
Well, let me ask you an ultimate question. Sally Smith should not have been running Maya's treatment in any way, shape, or form, should she?
Right, she'd have to be a treating physician, and my understanding she was not.
Anything further, Mr. Hunter?
Just briefly, Your Honor.
First of all, did you see any indication that Dr. Sally Smith was running the treatment team for Maya Kowalski?
I didn't. Again, she'd have to have written an order, you know, in the chart saying, you know, I order up this lab test or I do something else like that. That was done by others. So she might have given it, well, she did give advice at times, but that's not a treating physician.
Okay. So is giving advice on such things as whether a central line might come out, is that part of her role as a CPT medical director?
It is.
That's all I have for now. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Anderson?
It wasn't just giving advice. She was giving direction there. Do you agree?
I think you'd have to ask the parties involved in that. You know, technically, from what I'm seeing written, it looks like advice. But if they interpreted that she was giving direction and she was in charge, I don't see that in the notes.
All right, but the question is, it would not be part of her role.
Right. For her to be a treating physician that would be not a CPT role, that would be an attending physician role.
And nothing further.
Members of the jury, do any of you have any questions?
Dr. Alexander. The jury has a number of questions. Members of the jury, I'll be able to ask most, but not all of the questions. Is there any conflict of interest in a medical director of CPT to access a medical record through means outside DCF, through medical privileges from their private practice?
It depends. I can't just access anybody's records. That's major trouble, just to cruise around and look at records. But if I had somebody that said, they called me up and directed me to a particular person and said they had some question, and part of the process of helping them with their question, that would be okay. But it wouldn't be okay just to, just check anybody out willy-nilly and, see what their record is.
Is the pursuit of acting as a liaison and educational support for emergency physicians within the scope of expectation of the role?
Could you ask that again?
Is the pursuit of acting as a liaison and educational support for emergency pediatricians within the scope of expectation of the role? I think it's of medical director.
Sure. Well, is a CPT medical personnel.
CPT medical director.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Even within their own assigned jurisdiction, where the doctor plays an integral role educating doctors in their own case?
Right. That's part of what we do.
Since Dr. Smith is part of a structure designed to assess fairly a medical situation, do you think this could contribute to the potential for young doctors to misconstrue that advice?
Well, if the question is she an authority figure that people are going to look up to and think that she knows something about this area? Well, of course, that's what her job is to do that. If I'm interpreting that question correctly, in the way that I would look up to a cardiologist because they know more about that than I do.
Why wouldn't the Department of Children and Families, in representing the interests of the state, provide a separate ID for identity to identify their representatives while they are pursuing their investigation?
Well, I don't know about the Department of Children and Families, but we're not the Department of Children and Families at all. And we're not Dr. Smith would, as medical director, would have derived some salary from the Department of Health. And so to some extent they might regard her as a Department of Health, but not DCF. And that we draw a really clear line that we're different than DCF.
Next, does the hospital have to call Dr. Sally Smith first? Is there any harm in a hospital staff calling the hotline as a reporter? Is there? There is no harm in a hospital staff calling the hotline as a mandatory reporter, is there?
No, in fact, that's usually what happens. Is usually we hear about this because it has been reported to DCF. But if they have a question or they want to sometimes give us a heads up, this is in process. We sometimes hear from the hospital on that. We certainly do that in Jacksonville, and we do it around the state.
You testified there were several reports/calls to CPT. Are you testifying that there were more than one call placed before the hospital called Dr. Sally Smith?
In terms of attempted reports to DCF, yes.
Okay. Was the first call not accepted by CPT, and that is why Dr. Tepa reached out to Dr. Sally Smith to see if the hospital had enough information on abuse to make the call?
Yeah, except CPT doesn't accept calls. DCF accepts calls. It's their hotline, not ours. Yeah, it would be. It may well be, and I guess you'd have to ask them, but I agree with the general proposition that she was trying to see if Sally Smith thought there was something there or not.
In your testimony, you said something similar to a child protection specialist is not assigned to a hospital, but a zone or area. Am I correct?
That's right. We're structured so that we cover an area. So my Jacksonville team covers 8 counties, and we can go in, by state law, we can go into any hospital. We don't need privileges for child abuse issues, and we can see the child and we can look at their records. So we're area focused, county focused. We're not hospital focused.
At the time of Maya's 2016 visits to Tampa General and Johns Hopkins All Children, were those 2 hospitals in the same zone?
Tampa General is served by the Tampa Child Protection Team. And the other one, I'm sorry, was?
Johns Hopkins.
Johns Hopkins, that's Pinellas, and those are separate child protection teams. I mean, obviously they get patients that go back and forth, and so hopefully they're getting some good communication between the 2 teams.
So Dr. Sally Smith would not have been the person assigned to the Tampa zone?
Right, so if there was a formal report and a report had to be generated just for Tampa stuff alone, then I would expect that that would be the Tampa CPT team that would actually come in and do that. But again, if there's records from other places and your final destination is, say, Pinellas, then I'd expect that the Pinellas person gathers all that information, writes a report.
Is it normal for Sally Smith, acting in a DCF capacity, to even offer medical advice to Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital on a juvenile patient while she is not to be a doctor at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, but now in the hat of a DCF investigator?
Well, she's not a DCF investigator. Once again, I'm sorry, but we are not DCF. We are Department of Health, and the medical directors of the state, we've had meetings on this since 2004, and we're very particular about that point. The conflict of interest for Sally Smith would be as if this was a patient in her private practice, in which case she might have to recuse herself and have a different medical provider do something. So that's the conflict. It's not the fact that she works at a hospital in which she might also have to see a CPT case.
The juror just said, please replace DCF with the initials you need to identify today. So.
Okay.
So let me just re-ask the question. Is it normal for Dr. Sally Smith, acting as the medical director of the child protection team capacity, to offer medical advice to Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital on a juvenile patient while she is not to be a doctor at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, but now in the hat of the medical director of the child protection team?
It's normal and expected.
Mr. Hunter, any further questions? Mr. Anderson.
A follow-up to the juror's question on the timeline. So was your understanding there was a first call, a hotline, right? And then, are we in agreement there? Obviously there was.
We are, yeah. There was, yeah.
And then there was a second call from the hospital, Dr. Tapia Sanchez, to Dr. Smith after that?
So we're talking about the first call being the call to the DCF hotline?
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was, and then some communication that went on between the 2 doctors.
Right. And then after that, a second call was made.
To DCF, yes.
And that one was accepted.
Yes.
Is it true that the threshold for the requirement of making a call is exceedingly low?
Well, it's low. I don't know if I'd say exceedingly.
Sustained.
So it's low.
It's a reasonable suspicion threshold.
All right. Pretty subjective.
Well, purposely so.
Yeah.
Sustained.
All right. But as a CPT, again, how should I refer to her? A CPT, what? She's not a prosecutor, she's not an investigator, she's just a doctor, a CPT doctor?
Well, she's a pretty well trained doctor, but I would say just a doctor. But no, she's a CPT medical provider. She's the medical director for the Pinellas team.
All right. But when she steps into whatever role she has at Johns Hopkins, she's not able to violate a parent's right to control medical treatment for the child, is she?
Not in the sense of just normal treatment, but she's certainly entitled to perform CPT functions as specified in state law.
No further questions.
Anything further, Mr. Hunter? No, Your Honor. Looks like I have another juror question coming. Just the one? That's it. There's just the one. Sir, is Sally Smith with CPT, the Department of Health, or any others? Who does she work for?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of that.
Who does she work for?
In that role, she works with her particular team, but the medical directors that aren't part of universities, which she would have been, they had some direct deposits. The way that DOH structured it is for the process of administration, not for seeing kids, but just administration. They would directly pay the medical directors around the state. Again, not for those of us that work at universities. It was a different situation. And then her team would pay her, they have the contract from the Department of Health, and their team would then pay her for clinical things like seeing kids, things along that line. I think most of her pay was actually private practice, which was different than child protection team altogether.
Any follow-up, Mr. Hunter?
Briefly, Your Honor, just to try to clarify a couple things. What state agency controls the child protection team program?
The Department of Health.
But do the teams advise and serve as a resource to the Department of Children and Families?
We do. Police, prosecutors, people that are authorized. But in the legal intro, as perhaps you all know, is we're there to assist the Department of Children and Families, but we're not them.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to ensure I'm getting the right answer here, you were aware that Dr. Sally Smith had a private practice as well, a pediatrics practice?
Right. Being medical director in Pinellas County is not a full-time job. It was part-time.
So she had 3 different jobs?
I'm sorry?
3 different jobs? If you call her private practice a job, I would.
Well, I would call that a job, right? So the
CPT and then whatever role of the hospital.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. I sustain the objection.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have one more question, Doctor. But it was in regard to one of the last questions before. Am I allowed to ask it?
I don't know. I mean, it's your time. The time clock is ticking. So,
are CPT doctors allowed or encouraged to change their opinions as they progress through their evaluation?
Yes. We write addendums if something significant comes along, or sometimes we order up lab tests or x-rays and they're not immediately available. We're supposed to get all our reports done within 10 days, but some things take longer than that, and so if things come up, we'll write an addendum.
Thank you.
Mr. Hunter,
Nothing further on.
anything else from the jury?
Oh,
Well, Mr. Hunter, did you have another question?
no, I was going to ask Your Honor about an issue.
I think you'll be visiting with me in a moment.
I think we'll have our chance.
Mr. Anderson? Members of the jury, there's another question, Doctor. Is a doctor with a private practice, quote, not a job, end quote? What do you call a doctor with a private practice?
It's a job. Being a pediatrician and seeing kids is definitely a job.
Anything further, Mr. Hunter?
No, sir.
Anything further, Mr. Anderson?
No, Your Honor.
Anything further, members of the jury? Okay, members of the jury, I think this is a good time for us to take a break. It's probably going to be a healthy 15 minutes, Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves, do not do any investigation, and receive no information.
All rise. Your executive.
Okay, the jury is out of our presence. Does everyone please have a seat? Madam Court Reporter, we're going to mark this part of the transcript as the beginning of a proffer. Dr. Alexander, there's going to be several questions that are asked that are outside the presence of the jury, so we're going to start with Mr. Hunter.
I'm going to make this kind of a summary oral proffer, Your Honor. Doctor, have you reviewed the report? Well, first of all, have you reviewed in some detail the records that Dr. Sally Smith accumulated in her review of the Maya Kowalski case?
Yes.
And have you also reviewed the reports that she rendered as a result of her review of those records and her evaluation of Maya Kowalski and her discussions with the Kowalski family and others?
Yes.
Based on that review, do you have an opinion that you can express within a reasonable degree of medical probability with respect to whether Dr. Sally Smith's conduct complied with the standard of care expected of CPT medical directors in conducting their review of a case such as Maya Kowalski's?
I do have an opinion, yes.
And what is that opinion, sir?
The opinion is that yes, it did conform to what I would expect a medical director or a CPT medical provider to do.
Okay. And do you believe that her conclusions, as stated in that report, are appropriate and within the standard of practice for CPT medical directors?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have, Judge.
Mr. Anderson.
So your standard of care would include leaving out reports from almost all of the non-Johns Hopkins, non-TGF, non-Lurie's large hospital doctors.
Jay Shaw, you may.
Earl, you can answer.
I thought she reviewed some of those things, so I'd have to know the details of which things you're talking about that are there or not. But I know she did a lot of follow-up with various providers and things, and so I'm not quite sure what you're referring to.
Sure. To come to your attention that her report did not mention the strong opinion of Dr. Kirkpatrick.
She didn't document that opinion in her report as such. I believe she attempted to contact him. I can't remember if he was the one that she was saying and able to contact, or she did contact him.
She did contact him. She did not
Right.
put it in the report. All right. And is the standard of care also to leave out Eagles Wings counseling and instead represent that the Kowalskis were not having any counseling?
Well, if she didn't know it and she said that there was no counseling, then that would be what she knew at the time.
What if she had the records right there in front of her and she left them out? Would that meet your standard of care?
No, I mean, then she shouldn't have said there was no counseling if she knew there was.
And nobody's brought you up to speed, I guess, on Maya's relapses since all this occurred in 2016, 2017.
Not well enough. I mean, I've heard sort of vague stuff, and I'd hesitate to have this court think that I know it well enough to give a valid opinion.
Very good. Thank you, Doctor.
Anything further, Mr. Hunter?
That's it, Judge.
May this doctor be excused from all subpoenas and allowed to return to Jacksonville?
As far as I'm concerned.
No objection, Your Honor.
Drive safely, doctor.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Thanks.
Anything before we go on our break?
We can do it now or after the break, Your Honor. We found the letter that should have been attached to that email that was admitted this morning.
Let's go ahead and put it up real quick.
I have a copy for the court since it looks like our
You have a copy for us
person.
as well?
May I approach? Yeah, I have a copy for you as well.
Thanks. We don't have any objection to if they want to include that.
There it is.
And so, remind me, it's 2408. What did I do earlier today?
So what you admitted earlier today, Your Honor, was how the defense had marked it as 3192. This is how, or I'm sorry, 3192 was the defense's marking.
No, I don't think that's right. Give me a second. It is, in fact, 3315.
No, 3315 was excluded. That was to Dr. Cantu.
Oh, all right, hold on one second.
It's 3192 on the first page of your exhibit
Oh, you're
list.
right.
So it was admitted as 3192. We could either make it 3192A with this additional page, or we could admit it as what we had marked it as 2408.
Judge, what I would suggest is that we just have this added. We'll have someone on our team make it 3192A, and we'll attach it, and so it'll be right after 3192.
So long as it's going to be clear to the jury that they go
No,
together.
we'll put it with 3192, if that's it.
That's fine. Why don't you get with the
Yeah.
technical folks, and then when you come back, advise what it is so we can make sure that the clerk also has it.
Yeah, I just don't know if the 3193 exists, so that's why I'm suggesting we do 3192 and 3192A.
Anything else before we take our break?
No more for the plaintiff unless you've got something there.
Anything else from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. 10 minutes.
All rise. Closing recess.
wants to do.
We can play them both.
Okay, all right, so that will be what will conclude the morning.
That'll take us almost to noon.
Right, right. That was our thought.
I am going to go prepare a rebuttal. Leave it in the hands of Ms. Lawrence.
Okay.
And Nick.
Ms. Lawrence is fine.
Judge, and as to the rehearing on countering Smith's testimony, she always wears a lab coat. Will the court be deciding that today at some point?
I will be after lunch.
Thank you, Judge. Appreciate it.
Anything else that you need, Mr. Anderson, before you leave?
Not on my part, Nick. Anything else? Okay. I'm leaving. Thank you, Your Honor.
Are we ready to bring back the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
And at some point, I'll need the designation breakdowns for those two depositions.
Oh,
Timelines.
Jurors answering?
Okay, please be seated. Members of the jury want to confirm while you were away, you did not discuss this case amongst yourselves, you did no investigation and received no information. Is that all correct?
correct.
We have two different depositions to play next, which will cumulatively take us about an hour and 15 minutes. So we should be finishing this right about noon so we can break for lunch. Okay. I'm assuming we leave the lights as is. It's okay. We'll leave the lights as is. Ms. Corrales.
Yes, the defense would call Sharon O'Leary Johnson.
Ma'am, will you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give today be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do.
Good morning, Ms. O'Leary Johnson. My name is David Hughes. I represent Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. How are you doing this morning?
Great.
So let's go ahead and get started. Can you please state your name and professional address for the record, please?
Sharon O'Leary Johnson and the Guardian Light Office here in Sarasota.
All right. Can you please give me the benefit of your educational background from where you went to high school all the way through any degrees or licenses you may have obtained over the years?
Okay, I went to Rutherford Union High School in the Detroit area. I graduated from Michigan State University with a bachelor's in education. I got a master's at Central Michigan University in educational administration. And I am all but dissertated out of Michigan State in organizational behavior / development and instructional design.
Okay. Can you please just briefly outline the types of things you did throughout your career in the realm of education?
I taught elementary school, 6th grade. I was a principal of 2 different alternative high schools. And then I went into business and I worked for various companies developing training programs and training strategies.
Can you please explain in a little bit more detail the types of positions you've held in education and just give me a general timeline of when you served in those roles.
Okay, 1980, I taught 6th grade for 2 years. And then then probably from 84, 85 to 90 or so, I was a principal of 2 different alternative high schools. And then probably from 94 to 2017 or 18, I worked in the business area. I worked for Frito-Lay, I worked for Nestle, and I worked as an independent contractor or consultant. And I developed training programs and strategies usually for frontline workers.
Okay. How was it that you came to become a guardian ad litem volunteer?
I was involved in the Texas and Dallas area in the Children's Advocacy Center as a donor and also as worked on committees for golf things. Then when I moved to Florida, I was going to be partially retired because in my job, I travel a lot. And so I was partially retiring, so I thought I had the time. So I went in to look at becoming a guardian ad litem.
Approximately when did you first start serving as a guardian ad litem here in Florida?
Let's say 7 years ago, like 2014 or 15, somewhere around there.
And approximately how many cases have you volunteered for with the guardian ad litem's office there in Sarasota?
5.
Okay. And do you handle multiple cases at a time, or do you typically handle one case at a time?
1 case at a time.
Okay. My understanding is that you served as Maya Kowalski's guardian ad litem back in 2016 and 2017. Is that correct?
Yes.
How was it that you came to be involved with Maya Kowalski's case?
I was asked by my manager if I would be interested in taking that case because I finished off my other case.
Okay. And who was the manager?
Jessica Black, Jessica Black something. I forget her last name.
I believe it's Black Rick. Does that sound familiar?
No, that's it.
Okay. So why don't you walk me a little bit through what Mrs. Black Rick's role in a situation like Maya Kowalski's case would have been versus what your role was?
I can tell you what my role was.
Okay. And why don't we start there?
My role was to visit Maya, talk with her, and make observations, and make sure her educational needs were being met.
What does that mean to you as a guardian ad litem that you're serving to further the child's best interest?
It means when there is a court case, to ask the child, depending on the age, if they want to go or what they want to say to the court, and to advocate to make sure that if they want certain things or if they have certain requests, for an example, if somebody wanted to go to summer camp or somebody wanted to go play soccer or do something that is normalcy for other kids, that I try to work with different people, the guardian fund, my manager, or whatever, to try to make things like that happen. And in some cases, to make sure that the place they're at is safe, and to make sure they're getting, medical, like if they need a dentist visit or where they are on those kinds of things.
And my understanding is from time to time that you also enter notes around the time of some of your visits. Is that correct?
Correct.
And did you do that in this case with Maya Kowalski, enter notes around the time of your visits with her?
Yes.
And have you had a chance to review those notes before today?
Yes.
And when you say notes, what are you talking about?
It was printed out what I had written down in Optima.
All right. And what is Optimum?
Optima is an application that's used by the guardian ad litems to document. I use it to document my notes, and I don't know what everybody else uses it for.
And my understanding is that on a few occasions you went and visited Maya Kowalski at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
Correct.
Do you recall, separate and apart, anything that you may have documented? And we'll go through your documentation, but separate and apart from what you may have documented, as you sit here today, do you have an independent recollection of your observations of Maya Kowalski?
No.
Okay. So when I say the name Maya Kowalski, what comes to mind?
A little girl I visited at the hospital who liked her little Shopkins and liked to play the piano.
All right. So it's fair to say that you took an oath to serve as the guardian ad litem for Maya Kowalski in this case?
Yes.
Why don't you, can you just describe in general terms what it was, what your understanding of the role it was you were to perform here was?
To visit and observe Maya to make sure that she was getting her needs met and to advocate for her in court.
Well, let's go to your first visit then, which we can find here on GAL 14. Are you able to view that and read it? Or would you like me to blow it up a little bit more?
No, I can read it. So you're referring to the one on October 24th?
Yeah, it says name Sharon O'Leary Johnson, case number, activity date 10/24/16, activity type contacted child in current placement, subject visit in hospital. Do you see that?
Yes, I got it. I just want to make sure I'm reading the right one. So I'm reading it.
Just from a foundational standpoint, the document we're looking at here on GAL 14, do you recognize that as your note that you prepared following a visit with Maya on October 24th, 2016?
Yes.
Okay. Having read that note, does the note trigger any recollection about your first visit with Maya at the hospital on the 24th?
Just that she was a nice girl to visit with.
Okay. And what do you mean that she was a nice girl to visit with?
She was talkative. She was welcome for my visit.
Okay. You note here, quote, she didn't look like she was in pain, end quote. Do you see that?
Yes.
What did you mean when you entered that into her chart?
Right above it, she was smiling and laughing and telling me about how her hospital room was all set up and her dolls and all that kind of stuff. So she was smiling and laughing, and I don't normally associate that with pain.
Okay. And then you note that a nurse came in to take her blood pressure and she made a face and said she hated it because it hurt. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. Why is it that you entered that into the note from this visit for today?
Because that's what I saw.
Whether you found it strange that Maya's demeanor would change depending on who was in the room.
Strange? Maybe a little.
And why is that?
Because we were just laughing and talking, and then a nurse walked in, and then she changed her demeanor a little bit.
What do you mean by she changed her demeanor a little bit?
What she said let's see, what did I write down? She made a face that when the person came in, And I wrote down she made the face because she said it hurt when they did that.
My second note that I have here is on GAL 13, and it appears to be a note from November 9 of 2016. It bears your name, Sharon O'Leary Johnson, with the case number. It says contact the child in current placement, contact type face-to-face, hours 3.0. Do you see the document we're talking about here?
Yes.
You start the note by noting that Maya was in a lot of pain. Do you see that?
Yes.
Is it fair for me from your note to interpret that Maya expressed that she was in pain to you?
Yes, Maya expressed she was in pain.
And what was your observation about whether or not Maya appeared to be in pain?
We began talking. It didn't appear she was in pain.
You mentioned briefly earlier that Maya's room was decorated. What do you recall about the way in which Maya's room was laid out and decorated on the times that you visited?
Maya had her bed, and then if you're laying in the bed to the right, there was like a long couch, and she had her little Shopkins dolls and all sorts of, I guess, toys, different kinds of things. I think she had her makeup stuff next to her on her bed, and she had her artwork hanging.
Did you ever observe her playing with makeup, playing with dolls, doing any artwork, anything like that?
Yes.
Was she able to use her hands?
Yes.
Did you ever have the opportunity to watch Maya trying to get around her room?
Yes, but not at this visit, I don't believe.
Okay. Well, let's just talk in general. Whenever that was, how did Maya appear to get around while you were observing her in the room?
She either moved the wheelchair over a little bit, or she asked me to move it over.
There were times she moved her own wheelchair. Is that correct? Approximately how many times did you observe Maya moving her wheelchair on her own?
I don't remember.
Well, let's go to our next visit here. I believe it's from November 30, 2016. It's at GAL 12. I've got it pulled up right now. It says Sharon O'Leary Johnson, case number. Activity date is listed as November 30, 2016. Contact the child, other location, visit, face-to-face, 3 hours. Do you see the document that I'm talking about?
Yes.
And then I note on this visit you state, quote, I helped her with her shoes. She was very quiet, end quote. What are you describing there?
We were going to go down to play the piano in the lobby. She was quiet. She seemed sad.
Okay. Did you recall her explaining why she was sad?
No, not in particular, but in general, she missed her mom and her dad and her brother.
And it says here, quote, we went down to play the piano and she was playing well and having fun, end quote. What are you describing there in that portion of your note?
So when we started, she was sad, and then we went down and she got to play the piano, and she was having fun doing it.
What do you recall about her ability to play the piano, if anything?
Pretty good for 10.
Okay. What do you mean pretty good for 10?
Well, I mean, she played with both hands and played some songs.
I understand. And where was this piano in relationship to Maya's room?
In a lobby of some sort at the hospital. I can't remember exactly, but we had to get on an elevator and go down.
And then at some point during the piano playing, you note, quote, when I went to play, she moved herself out of the way so I could access the keys, end quote. Do you see that?
Yeah.
What are you describing there in your note?
She moved herself over.
Did you have to physically move her over, or was that Maya moving herself
No,
over?
she moved herself.
And then at some point, it seems like her father showed up during this visit. Is that correct?
Yeah,
And it looks like, based on your note, you went back to Maya's room with Mr. Kowalski and Maya. Is that correct?
correct.
And it appears as if Mr. Kowalski brought her some toys or some presents on this visit. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And you noted here that she was, quote, excited. And when we returned to the room, she put stuff on the couch, then moved her wheelchair from the couch to the chair and began cutting, wrapping, and untying Shopkins, end quote. Do you see that?
Yes.
What are you describing there in that portion of your note?
What she did.
Okay. You said here, quote, she was very excited and didn't look like she was in pain. Do you see that?
Yes.
Why did you include that sentence in your note?
She was excited and cheering and and doing things and back to what the shelter order was. I was making observations for people who are experts to use however they saw fit.
I think you concluded or wrote at the end of this note here, quote, this time I didn't notice her looking like she was in pain at all, end quote. Do you see that?
Yes.
I mean, let me ask you this. Did you author that line at the end of of this note here that says, quote, this time I didn't notice her looking like she was in pain at all, end quote?
Yes.
And what part of the visit are you referencing in that final sentence?
The piano afterwards.
Piano afterwards, that would include her visit with her father?
Correct.
Okay. So it's fair to say if you visited the child, you authored a note?
Correct.
So ma'am, I just showed you a document that is a guardian ad litem report to the court, and it's signed by Jessica Blackrick for Sharon O'Leary Johnson. Okay?
Right.
You see that document?
I do.
Okay. Is there anything in here that you disagree with in this report?
No, I don't believe so.
Ma'am, my question was, do you have any reason to believe that anything in this report is untrue?
No, I don't have any reason to believe it.
So, Ms. O'Leary Johnson, do you recall at any point helping Maya Kowalski put her shoes on?
Yes. In my notes, I wrote before we went to play the piano that I helped her put her shoes on.
What do you recall about helping Maya put her shoes on before you took her down for the piano?
Just that all I recall now is just helping her put her shoes on.
Is there anything in paragraph 3 of this report we're talking about here that says observations of the child that you believe to be incorrect?
No, I don't believe anything's incorrect.
When you got to the hospital, or if you called them beforehand, I don't know if you called them or just saw them the first time in the hospital, but when you first spoke to somebody at the hospital, what did they tell you about Maya and her condition?
Nothing.
Well, I'm not under oath, but I'm assuming you spoke to somebody at the hospital, one of the nurses or someone, about Maya's condition.
No.
And during the course of that conversation, they told you something negative about Beata Kowalski.
No.
And during the course of those conversations, they intimated that Beata was some kind of evil person that was keeping Maya from getting better. And that's why she was there. Isn't that true? Isn't that true?
Same.
During one of those conversations, you learned that the hospital was trying to demonstrate instances where Maya was not in pain. Isn't that true?
No.
Do you agree with me on that more than one occasion you made comments to the effect that Maya did not seem like she was in pain?
Yes.
And comments like she could move herself in the bed, roll over. You made comments like that, right?
I did not say she could roll over.
All right.
I believe in my notes, I said that she moved herself in her wheelchair to the couch to play with the presents that her dad purchased for her.
Now, what was the purpose of that in determining Maya's best interest? of putting that in there?
Because of my understanding, limited understanding of the shelter order. I made observations of what I saw.
Do you have any medical training whatsoever to understand exactly when someone's in pain or not in pain?
No?
You said, when I went to play, she moved herself out of the way so I could access the keys. Now, why would you say that if you weren't trying to specifically prove something?
Mr. Anderson, my job is to report what I saw and my observations and my opinion about what I saw. And that's what I documented.
No, your duty was to protect Maya, was it not?
Wouldn't say the term protect. My term I would use would be advocate.
Okay, and why advocate? Don't you advocate for Maya?
Correct.
Or are you advocating for the state?
Advocate for Maya.
Do you advocate for the hospital?
No.
But you took whatever they said to be true, correct?
I didn't talk to the hospital.
All right. Well, you say you report what you saw. Would you agree with me? It's a little unusual to pick out of all the things you saw. When I went to play, she moved herself out of the way so I could access the keys. Now, why else would a guardian ad litem possibly put that particular, out of all the interactions with that little girl, why would a guardian ad litem supposed to protect her put that scenario in?
Because it's what I saw.
Okay. All right. And so if we're talking about the actual time with Maya, we should deduct 1 to 2 hours, depending from that 3 hours, right?
I spend between probably 35 minutes to an hour with Maya on each visit.
In any event, you also said that when we returned to the room and put stuff on the couch, then moved her wheelchair from the couch to the chair and began cutting, wrapping, and untying Shopkins. Did you not?
Yes.
Okay, so why put in about her moving her wheelchair if it wasn't to try to prove a point?
Just put it in because I thought it was important to note.
Well, right after that, you say she was very excited and didn't look like she was in pain. You see that?
Correct. Yeah.
And then the next sentence is, this time I didn't notice her looking like she was in pain at all. Right?
Correct.
Now, would you agree with me, to most reasonable people, it looks exactly like you were putting in instances there to try to support your conclusion that Maya wasn't in pain?
I'm not an expert on everything. I'm just reporting that to me, and being not an expert, she didn't appear like she was in pain. At the time, I thought it was relevant for my team to see.
Relevant for who?
My team, my child advocate manager and my attorney. To my understanding, they're the only people that see what's in Optima.
Okay. So again, like the hospital, you use a team approach, right? Go ahead. You use a team approach.
We use a team approach.
And you're saying the only goal is to reunite Maya with her family?
That's the primary goal in all our cases.
I'm asking you to connect up how putting all these comments in these notes, how does that help reunite Maya with her family?
I don't know one way or another what it was going to do. I was documenting my thing. That's all I can tell you. I wasn't trying to not reunite Maya. I wanted what was best for Maya.
Well, if we go then to the November 9th, 2016, working back, when I asked Maya how she was doing, she said she was in a lot of pain. We then began talking about various things, her artwork, going to baking class, makeup and clothes. During that discussion, she was smiling and giggling and had a great time. Farther down, you say, she didn't appear to be in pain. How is that reuniting Maya with her mom, her dad, and her brother?
To be perfectly honest with you, I don't really know the answer. I don't put those two together. It was not to do either one of those things. It was to be able to document for my team, this is what I saw in a snapshot in time.
Did your team want to help prove that Beata Kowalski was abusing Maya?
No.
And then you say in PT that when they moved her from the chair to the mat, PT, it says, it's hard to read, but when they moved her from the chair to the mat and she made faces, but as soon as they engaged in an activity, the grimace was replaced with a smile. You learned that from the physical therapist right there?
Yes, that's what the physical therapist said.
Instead of that, instead of saying nothing, you said, she told me that it wasn't proper protocol to take blood pressure on a RSD patient. She made a face during the process, but once resumed talking to me, I can't read this, I'm sorry. It says, but when over, resumed talking to me. Okay. So she made a face during the process, but went over, resumed talking to me. And then you also say, she told me she didn't like the PT because she really shouldn't be doing it. She also told me that her maternal grandfather had pain in her legs and that her mother told her grandmother probably had RSD also because it runs in the family. So would you agree with me that you were in fact discussing Maya's illness, her reflex sympathetic dystrophy?
Maya was discussing it.
Well, what was your role in discussing it?
I don't recall other than listening to her.
Why put it in the report? Is it going to medical doctors?
Not going to medical doctors.
Then why put it in the report?
Because I wanted my team to know what I observed and what she said.
If you Googled it, you'd recognize what RSD lesions look like. Would you agree with me there?
No, I'm not an expert. I'm not a doctor.
Did you ever see anything to indicate that Maya's pain wasn't completely real?
No.
So, again, your primary duty is to ensure the child's returning to, or one of the primary duties is to ensure the child is returning to a safe home. Is that right?
Yeah. It's my duties are to advocate for the child.
Advocate what for
And
the
the goal that we have is to reunify the child with the family.
All right.
So it's kind of two separate, one's a goal, one's a responsibility.
Well, what else did you comment on other than her pain levels?
She was happy, giggling, she played the piano, she was cutting up stuff with her dolls, she played with her dolls.
Well,
different things that we did.
Well, you're not a doctor, but you reported on whether you thought she had pain. right?
I reported on that it didn't appear, my opinion. Right?
But you
And
did
I
report-
reported it to my team, not to anyone else.
Okay. Would there have been occasions where you would have discussed this case with members of your team, either Ms. Blackrick or a guardian ad litem attorney?
Yes.
All right. So my understanding is you documented certain things in notes, and that's through Optima, right?
Yes.
Okay. And at other times, am I correct in concluding that you would have had oral conversations with Ms. Blackrick and perhaps Mr. Monahan?
Yes.
And do you know if all of those oral conversations get committed to writing or not?
I don't know.
Am I correct in assuming that you don't recall each and everything that you reviewed or that you spoke to in connection with your guardian ad litem services here?
Correct.
Okay. And I think you mentioned members of the guardian ad litem team. That would have been Ms. Blackrick, Mr. Monahan. Is there anybody else on the team that you would have reported to?
No.
Okay, and Ms. Crows, what's the next step?
Deposition.
Deposition of Dr. Wyndham.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good morning, Dr. Wyndham. Thank you for coming in today and taking some time out of your busy practice to answer some questions about your involvement with Maya Kowalski. I'd like to just start off by getting your name and date of birth for the record, please.
Hugh Wyndham, January 16, 1959.
Can you give me the benefit of your education and training in your specialty, starting with college and moving through fellowship, please?
Undergraduate, Duke University, medical school, Duke University, internal medicine, residency, internship, Georgetown University, allergy immunology, Johns Hopkins University.
Can you please explain what an allergist and immunologist does?
Cares for patients, adult and children with allergic and immunologic conditions, ranging from respiratory, skin, drug reactions, insect reactions, immune deficiencies.
And you indicated you treat both pediatric and adult patients?
Correct.
Are you able to estimate what percentage of your practice is pediatric versus adult?
We always say about 25% kids, 25% Medicare, and other in between.
You do have some staff privileges at some local hospitals, correct?
Correct.
Which ones do you have privileges at?
Sarasota Memorial Hospital, and I guess consulting at Doctor's Hospital, and the same thing at Lakewood Ranch.
Okay. And I also see here that you are or were an associate clinical professor of medicine at USF, College of Medicine?
And indeed, in both FSU and USF.
Okay. And how long have you been doing that?
25 years.
And do you have any board certifications?
In internal medicine and allergy and immunology.
Where have you practiced since you were completing your fellowship in allergy and immunology?
Here in Sarasota.
Do you have any independent recollection of treating Maya Kowalski or interacting with her mother, Beata Kowalski?
No.
Okay. It's fair to say you'll be chart-driven today?
All chart-driven.
In other words, you're going to rely on what you documented
Yes.
back in 2015. And your paperwork indicates that the referring physician here was a John Wassenaar.
Correct.
Do you know who Dr. Wassenaar is?
Yes.
What's your experience with Dr. Wassenaar?
All good.
So a reference to Dr. Kreisman below there?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who Dr. Kreisman is?
Yeah, adult children's, yep.
And do you know what his specialty is?
Pulmonary.
Pulmonary. The prescriptions that Maya Kowalski was on and over-the-counter medications, according to this new patient questionnaire, were what?
Qvar, albuterol, Claritin, Flonase, prednisone, cough medication. I think there's another thing, I can't read the other one. HVI, MVI, multivitamins, probiotic.
Okay. Can you please explain what Qvar,
Qvar
just
is
explain what all these medications
Qvar
are?
is an inhaled steroid for asthma. Albuterol is a bronchodilator for asthma. Claritin is an antihistamine. Flonase is a nasal steroid. Prednisone is an oral steroid. Cough medicine, and multivitamins and probiotics.
The information relayed to you under respiratory allergies, subsection 3, what are listed there as things that, exposure that would make Maya worse?
Right.
What's listed there?
Cat, dust, smoke, mold, pollen.
Okay. And On 7, it indicates that Maya had been hospitalized previously for asthma.
Right, just a few days prior.
And what was the day of the first presentation?
June 24th.
2015?
Correct.
And was it the first time that you, to your knowledge, ever saw
Correct.
Maya Kowalski?
Correct.
And then under subsection 2, subsection D, can you please list off the types of steroids that were listed here?
Where are you?
Subsection
previous?
2D. Yeah.
Talking about the ones
Orpred.
circled or the ones?
Orpred, yeah.
yeah.
So she's had Orpred every 1 to 2 months.
And what is Orpred?
Orpred's an oral steroid.
Oral steroid.
Like prednisone.
Okay. Is it similar to prednisone?
It basically is, yes, liquid form.
Prednisone.
Yeah.
And prednisone can come in different forms.
Pretty much.
Liquid or pill
Liquid,
form.
oral, IV.
What was reported to you as her daily activities?
Gymnastics.
And I believe that says ice skating.
Sounds good. Ice skating.
Okay, all right. And we'll talk about what you actually observed and what was reported to you. I'd like to flash forward now to WAAS 1, which is what appears to be a consult note from your office dated June 24, 2015. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And to your knowledge, this is the first time that you saw Maya Kowalski?
Correct.
Okay. What was the reason for the appointment?
They wanted to discuss several things, some allergies to airborne allergens, review their previous testings, and deal with their breathing problems and cough.
And what were some of the symptoms that were reported to you under chest?
It went back into the previous week when she was hospitalized, but currently she was doing better. Just started coughing that day, just here in the office.
And it indicates here that Mom gave 20 milligram prednisone that night, correct?
That was back. That goes back to when the flare was 10 days ago.
And that was 2 days ago?
10 days ago.
10 days ago. So there was a flare 10 days ago before
Right.
presenting to you?
Exactly, and I was evaluating that.
Okay. And what does it indicate that Mother did in response to this flare-up 10
She
days?
gave 20 milligrams of prednisone that night and ended up in the hospital the next day.
Okay. And when was prednisone ended?
4 days ago, so it's like a 5 or 6 day course.
And what is prednisone, Doc?
Again, it's an oral steroid for inflammation.
Okay. Is it commonly given for patients
For
with asthma?
yes.
Were you aware of what Maya Kowalski's prednisone action plan was?
No, but I did, when I looked at Kreisman's note from the day before, I guess it was Kreisman's, they talked about an action plan. I don't recall if I ever saw her action plan.
I'd like to represent to you that Dr. Kreisman has documented and also testified that the action plan indicated that if Maya dipped into a quote-unquote red zone,
Right.
Based on a peak flow meter, that she was to be given prednisone,
Sure, that's
60 milligrams times 1, albuterol as well, and call Dr. Kreisman's office or call a local emergency room.
Correct.
Does that help refresh your recollection of
No,
what the
but
action plan was?
that's standard of care. So
Okay, that sounds like a standard action plan.
Yeah.
In terms of red zones for patients with suspected asthma, what is your customary cutoff for the use of prednisone with respect to oxygen saturations?
Specifically oxygen saturation?
Yes.
That's something we don't often have, but it's usually a collection of symptoms and findings. But in reference to oxygen saturation, you could say under 94, something like that. It depends on what that patient's done before. If it's a COPD patient, they live under 94, so it had to be under 90. So
But for a patient like Maya
for an
Kowalski-
asthmatic, who normally lives at 98, probably under 94 maybe.
Okay.
But we don't isolate drugs on one finding. It's how the patient's doing and how long it's been going on for, how they're sleeping at night, etc.
Same question for a peak flow meter.
That's subjective. The problem with that device is if you don't try very hard, it's not going to be very good, so we don't use that a lot, but it's always been historically part of the action plan, but it's faulty.
Anything remarkable under the social history?
Nope.
Hospitalization, major diagnostic procedure, asthma. What's the significance of that document or that note in your document?
Just to indicate that she's been hospitalized for asthma before.
Can you please describe what your physical examination was on
It was pretty
June
normal.
of 2015?
It was pretty normal. There was mild nasal mucosal edema, mild cobblestone in the back of the throat, which usually indicates drainage, postnasal drainage, and everything else. Some hypopigmented areas in the folds of her arms and behind her knees, which goes along with the history of eczema in the past.
Okay. And I see here in the first line that you note the patient was pleasant, NAD. What is the significance of that documentation?
To be truthful, it's kind of a default, but as long as someone's not in distress or sitting there febrile shaking, we all say pleasant, no apparent distress.
And
NAD.
you had a chance to also observe the patient's lungs, correct?
Yes.
How did you do that?
Listening to her back with the stethoscope.
And what was the finding of your lung examination?
It was clear and no abnormal breath sounds were heard.
And what is the significance of that, doctor?
At that moment, her lungs were clear.
We're going to move over to WAS 3 now, okay? There's a section here, assessment, correct?
Yes.
Is that your assessment?
Correct.
And these are the assessments that you
correct.
You put in the chart after your observation of the patient.
Correct.
What were your assessments?
Allergic asthma, allergic rhinitis, allergic conjunctivitis, atopic dermatitis, food reaction, and a family history of allergies.
And then asthma allergic. What is allergic asthma?
Asthma can be allergic and non-allergic. More often in kids, there's an allergy component, so it means they have allergies as a contributing factor to their airway.
And as a result of these assessments, I see here that you came up with 4 different treatment plans, correct?
Correct.
And what was the treatment for the allergic asthma?
To continue her current regimen of that inhaled steroid QVAR, and to have the reliever albuterol or ProAir available as needed.
And that was something that Maya was already on by the time
Correct.
she saw you?
It's just continuation, so no change.
And so the event that you're referencing there, that would have been something that was either from reported to you by
Correct.
either Beata Kowalski or Maya Kowalski?
Yeah, I didn't have records from the hospital.
Okay. And can you read the next line in your entry from there?
I said the cough that seemed to start when I'm here today sounds like a habit cough occurring every 15 seconds in a happy, well-appearing girl with normal lung sounds.
Doctor, what is a habit cough?
Habit cough is kind of a oftentimes involuntary, but a cough that kids will do, or some adults will do it as well. And it can become self-perpetuating. It's not due to underlying airway disease, it's more of an upper airway kind of throat-clearing cough.
What do you mean by self-perpetuating?
Well, if you cough long enough, you usually irritate the airways, and then nerve endings do get ticklish, and then you'll actually have a cough from that irritation. Just extracting yourself, you'll eventually hurt yourself and have a problem.
I'll represent to you, doctor, that there are some records pertaining to Maya Kowalski that reference a psychogenic cough. Do you know what a psychogenic cough is?
It would be similar, yep.
Is there any distinction or difference between a psychogenic cough and a habit cough?
No, I guess it's just a different word for the same thing.
When you reference a habit cough here, doctor, are you referring to an underlying pathology that caused that cough?
I don't know what it was caused by, but I would, it would dismiss asthma is what it would do, or dismiss some other lung pathology, but it's not saying what it is.
And you also noted here that she was a happy, well-appearing girl?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
That she wasn't in distress, wasn't struggling to breathe, wasn't using accessory muscles, wasn't in any form of distress.
You also note here, doctor, that she, Maya, apparently had a normal spirometry yesterday, end quote. Do you see that?
Right.
What was the source of this information that she had a normal
Well,
spirometry?
you want to say apparently, that means I didn't see the record. I subsequently got the record, I just saw it this morning, and it was normal.
Okay, and what is spirometry?
The breathing test. The breathing test she had the day before at the pulmonary office. And so mom must have mentioned, or dad must have mentioned that they told me it was good. Terrible, they tell you it was good, and then they told that she must have used the word normal.
Have you had a chance as of today to review spirometry readings from Maya Kowalski prior to the presentation on June 24, 2015 to your office?
I have now, yes.
What spirometry record did you review for Maya Kowalski?
From the day before, so the 23rd, I believe.
Do you recall where that spirometry test was performed?
Wherever, pulmonary office, I don't recall.
And what were the results of that spirometry test?
It looked normal.
And what again is a spirometry test?
A pulmonary function test.
PF, also known as a PFT?
Correct.
In patients with asthma, do you often see normal or abnormal spirometry tests?
Well, you can see both. Asthma is a labile disease that can be terrible one day and be good another day.
Okay.
But when it's good, it gives you confidence that there is hope, and they're not always chronically inflamed.
Now, your next line, you say, quote, something doesn't fit here, end quote. What did you mean when you documented that?
That's my little reminder to keep an open eye to a case that's not a round hole and round peg. That something didn't seem right. Not that I knew what it was, but we don't normally see that normal tests in settings of ER and hospital visits, and that's all. On the first visit, there wasn't much more to it than that.
It says, quote, turns out they have a pulse ox, and last week when, quote, so sick, end quote, it dropped to 96%, end quote. What is the significance of that notation, doctor?
That if someone was having severe asthma, it would have dropped lower than that.
Lower than 96%?
Correct.
is 96% within normal limits for a child like Maya Kowalski?
Yes.
What is the normal reference range for oxygen saturations in a patient like Maya Kowalski?
96 to 100.
And then you document here, quote, something is really not right. This is not just asthma, end quote. Do you see that?
Yes.
What is the significance of that notation?
Again, just to remind me at future visits that we need to keep an open eye. It may just be asthma, but there are some cases that we'd like to make sure we're not tunnel vision and dealing with one thing.
You're familiar with the concept of a differential diagnosis, correct?
Correct.
And what were some of the things that you were considering at this point on the differential diagnosis for Maya Kowalski?
I don't know if I had much in mind at that early stage. And then when she's seen a pulmonary already, that still makes me wonder if they got it right. And we would just want to get more information over time to see how it all pans out.
And then you note here, quote, I have not changed her asthma meds yet. If anything, I'd consider reducing them. Do you see that?
Correct.
Were you, as of June 24, 2015, considering reducing Maya Kowalski's asthma medications?
Because of the disconnect between symptoms and testing, both spirometry, pulmonary function, and pulse oximetry, that we always want to do no harm, and too much medicine can do harm.
Did you notice any rashes or lesions on the patient as of June 24, 2015?
Didn't record it, no.
Okay. And would that be something that you would have recorded in your ordinary practice if it had existed?
Yeah, probably.
And she's been avoiding shrimp, correct?
Correct.
And she's avoiding shrimp since 4 years of age?
Yes.
And that was on what date?
A follow-up visit on July 1st, 2015.
The HPI, history of present illness, would this be information provided by mom or the patient, or is this also something that you may have personally observed?
It's our interpretation of the history that we take from the patient and family.
Okay. Now, I note here that chest symptoms include cough and SOB, that's shortness of breath.
Correct.
Flared after leaving here last week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This would have been per a patient or family
That's right.
report?
That's, again, it's history,
Okay.
so yes.
So I'd like to know the source of the information to the best of your ability here for the comment,
this
quote,
whole
chest symptoms include a cough and SOB flared after leaving here last week, end quote.
Yeah, the whole HPI is a history taken from whoever's in the room.
And then the next line here says, quote, even though her pulse ox was 96, mom gave her 40 mg prednisone and albuterol 2 puffs, Q 20 minutes, time 4, and drove to ER, but it was busy, so they left, end quote.
Yes.
Do you see that?
Yes,
What would have been the source of that information?
the family.
So what is the significance of the documentation, quote, even though her pulse ox was 96, mom gave her 40 mg prednisone and albuterol 2 puffs, Q 20 minutes, times 4, end quote.
Just to raise a little question about the severity of the attack.
And I think you testified earlier that if a pulse ox is below 94, you could give prednisone.
Yes.
Okay, but above 94%, so above...
Depends on other circumstances as well, but there again, that's just kind of a red flag that we want to keep an eye on.
So based on the totality of the information you had as of July 1, 2015, what is your opinion about giving 40 milligrams of prednisone and 2 puffs of albuterol Q 20 minutes times 4 with a pulse ox of 96?
On the surface, I would just wonder about the overtreatment.
Okay. You had a chance to review the Venice Regional emergency room records associated with that visit, correct?
Yes.
Just describe generally the course of treatment at Venice Regional.
Basically, she went through triage, which means they just checked in. There's some discussion of pain.
Where was that pain?
In the throat, currently 8 out of 10 on the pain scale. Behavior is anxious, it says. And then the only evaluation, objective evaluation, are vital signs.
And what were the vital signs on June 24, 2015?
The pulse was elevated at 136, respiration is 22, normal temperature. Pulse ox was 100% on room air.
What does that mean, pulse ox 100% on room air?
And that was normal. She was oxygenating well.
Was she in a red zone?
No.
Okay. What else occurred at Venice Regional based on your review of Exhibit 2?
Been placed. This is taking too long. They left the premises. They left at 2018. They only got there at...
2018 would be what, 8:18 p.m.?
Yeah.
And do you know what time they arrived?
6 till 8.
6 till 8, so 7:54 p.m.?
Yeah.
And they departed?
They were there 22 minutes.
22 minutes and departed?
Yes.
Based on your review of Exhibit 2, how long were the Kowalskis at the emergency room?
18 minutes, 6:22.
22 minutes?
Yes. 24. I do my math better. 18 and 6, 24.
24 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Any indication from the emergency room records that the patient was in apparent distress with respect to her pulmonary function?
Mentions cough. She started with a little bit of cough, but progressively got worse. She had prednisone due to this mom's history. Since 6 p.m. tonight, patient coughing nonstop in triage. Breath sounds clear.
Oh, so the breath sounds were also noted to be clear?
Yes.
What was the pulse ox, doctor?
100%.
And what were the results of breath sound testing?
Breath sounds clear.
Okay. I'll turn back to your WAS 005 consult note authored by you July 1, 2015.
Yes.
We'll pick up where we left. After departing from Venice Regional, what was reported to you about Maya's condition?
Apparently she improved on the way home.
Okay. And then, quote, the week prior she had a 2-day hospitalization for the same thing, end quote. Do you see that?
Yes.
Would that have been per patient report?
Yes.
Okay. You also indicate here that, quote, she finished prednisone yesterday, end quote. Do you see
Yes,
that?
yes.
Would that have been per patient or mother report?
Yes.
Okay. Quote, nocturnal awakening due to breathing problems, none, end quote. Do you see that?
Yes.
What is the significance of that finding on the HPI?
That's a question we always ask, because severe asthma will cause nocturnal awakenings. If they're not having it, that's encouraging.
And were nocturnal awakenings happening here?
No.
So it indicates here she uses a bronchodilator infrequently, correct?
That's what it says.
What is a bronchodilator?
That'd be albuterol.
Okay, and that's like an inhaler?
Yes.
Okay. History of asthma since 7 years old, but had croup episodes earlier requiring hospitalization a few times. You see that?
Correct.
HENT. Current symptoms include minimal upper respiratory problems now, end quote. Do you see that?
Yep.
What's the significance of that documentation?
That the upper airway is doing well.
And you noted that the nasal secretions are clear.
Correct.
Now, we know that you did some epicutaneous skin testing. We talked a little bit about that earlier. What were the results of that skin testing?
The results are in bold, and it's positive: trees, Bermuda grass, a few molds, cat, dog, and cockroach.
In other words, based on your documentation, Maya was allergic to a few things, right?
Correct.
And what she was allergic to trees, right?
Yes, yep.
Any specific type of tree?
Oak, Australian pine, bayberry, birch, and beech.
Oh, allergies, okay. And so there's a family history of allergies.
Exactly.
And I think you said that allergies tend to run in families, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I see here that you say, quote, I was disappointed to hear that she ended up on a week of high-dose oral steroids the night she left here last week, end quote. Do you see that?
Yeah.
And when she left here last week, that's a reference to June 24, 2015?
Correct.
The consult we've already talked about?
Correct.
Why did you note that you were disappointed that Maya ended up on a week of high-dose oral steroids?
I don't like anybody getting sick. I don't like anybody having to use steroids.
Okay.
This is more a reference just to be personal.
Would you defer to other providers, though, that had prescribed steroids?
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that's unfortunate to hear that she ended up having this happen.
Okay. And I think we talked a little bit about Maya's asthma action plan. Did you see anything incorrect with her action plan?
No.
No,
but as things go on, then talking about the pulse oximetry needs to be looked at.
And I think you referenced earlier that red zone action plan was standard of care.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Moving forward here, you indicate, quote, the cough started here in the office, a classic habit cough with normal exam and peak flow rate, end quote. Do you see that?
Yes.
What's the significance of that entry?
Just again, put that flare in context with the contacts I saw that day, and then she was in the ER the next day, so just kind of saying that's how she was the day before.
So when you're saying the cough started here in the office, are you referencing on June 24?
Exactly.
Did you observe a classic habit cough or did you observe any cough on July 1 of 2015?
No, I don't believe so. Okay. We didn't do an exam, but there's no history, I don't think, but we're going to do an exam on a skin test because it's just have the testing.
Okay, this is more for skin testing.
Yes, but she wasn't coughing at the time.
All right. So if she was coughing on July 1, 2015, would you have made a note to that?
Yeah. Usually we'd say still coughing, or I already said she improved on the way home, so I must have said that's kind of where it ended.
Gotcha. So is it fair to say that this reference here is referencing items that occurred before July 1 of 2015?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And that would include, quote, even later that evening at home with worsening coughs and SOB, her pulse ox was 96%, end quote.
Yep.
Okay. Like it was the week before when she went to the hospital, end quote.
Yes.
Again, that's a reference to what happened prior to July 1 of 2015.
Right.
And then, quote, it says here, I have advised mom not to use steroids when her pulse ox is, I believe it says greater than 94%, end quote.
Yes.
And why did you make that recommendation?
Because again, things weren't adding up.
Okay. What do you mean things weren't adding up?
And she was getting serious treatment for numbers that were close, if not in the normal range.
And I see a reference here to, quote, her parents were arguing about taking her to ER, comma, so I wonder what role family dynamics are playing, end quote. Do you see that?
Yes.
What's the significance of that entry?
I guess, I mean, just to kind of throw in that variable, for good or bad, it's hard to know. I think whenever anybody's going to the ER and have sick kids, stress takes a place, but just pointing it out.
How did you come to learn that the parents were arguing about taking her to the ER?
Because I think I read from mentioned that Dad didn't want her to go or something like that. So
to the best of your knowledge, Dad didn't want to take the child to the ER?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this.
I come up with that somewhere.
Please tell me what you meant when you documented, quote, her parents were arguing about taking her to ER, so I wonder what role family dynamics are playing, end quote.
I don't know. I don't remember the conversation, but somewhere in there it must have been mentioned that one parent wanted to head to the ER and one didn't. But that's not uncommon with allergic reactions or asthma, that everybody has a different judgment of how severe it is. So it's really just a reference to what I was told.
And so what did you recommend for the, quote, big-time allergies the patient had?
That allergy shots or allergen immunotherapy would be a therapeutic option. And apparently they consented and wanted to proceed with it, so we were going to move forward in that direction.
What is allergy immunology, doctor?
Immunotherapy.
Immunotherapy. What is
allergy shots?
Allergy shots.
So we desensitize patients to ragweed, cats, dogs, trees, weeds.
Was there ever any follow-up for these injections?
No.
Was there any follow-ups with your office?
No.
Okay.
Oh, did we try to call them to remind them? I'd have to see if there was a telephone encounter. Okay. Probably was, but I think it said she was sick and didn't want to start the time yet. We did call.
Okay, so the best of your knowledge, there was never any follow-up on treatment number 2 for allergic rhinitis?
They did not proceed with it.
To the best of your knowledge, was there any follow-up for the treatment recommendation for allergic rhinitis?
They did not return for shots.
Okay. How do you know the patients did not return for shots?
They didn't see them again for 2 more years.
You have a note here that indicates, quote, her skin is doing well, just the residual hypopigmentation, end quote.
Yeah.
So as of this date, is it fair to say you didn't observe any abnormal skin lesions or ailments?
Right.
Okay. You didn't see those?
Did not.
When did you recommend the patient to follow up for the allergic rhinitis treatment?
They could start whenever it's convenient for them, so people will start the next week, 2 weeks later, whenever they're ready to come in and start the allergy shots.
Okay. And you also notice here follow-up in 4 months, correct?
And that would then be to see me as a visit to make sure there's progress on the allergy shots. But shots could have started any time.
And to your knowledge, that didn't happen?
Did not happen.
Okay. Did she follow up in 4 months?
No.
Did she follow up for the shots?
No.
Okay. All right. I'm going to fast forward here to WAS 8. That's a March 13, 2017 note authored by yourself. Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay. And the date on that progress note, March 13, 2017, right?
Correct.
That is how many months or years had elapsed since you last saw Maya Kowalski?
Like, 21 months.
I believe the last visit was what? July 1, 2015?
Like 20 months.
About 20 months, okay. 1 year, 8 months, yeah, 20 months, okay. And again, the primary care physician is still Dr. John Wassenaar. All right. Under reason for appointment, it is indicated that the patient has been doing well. Do you see that?
Yes.
All right. What's the significance of that entry?
That's just the nurse putting that in there, so I'm not sure.
Okay. And what has the patient been doing for allergies or asthma based on reason for appointment?
She's been taking Claritin and Flonase for her nasal symptoms. Her asthma's doing well with low-dose inhaled steroid Flovent. And she's not been eating her rescue or reliever, albuterol.
And is that the ProAir?
Yes.
So ProAir is just what, a brand
Relief
name?
Yeah, exactly.
Brand name for albuterol?
Yes.
Okay. Albuterol inhaler.
Right.
Okay. Under history of present illness, again, this is something that would have been provided per patient or family report.
Yes, right.
It indicates that, quote, she has been doing well since last office visit.
Yes.
Okay. And that last office visit was July 1, 2015.
Correct.
There's also a report here that the patient had minimal problems with breathing. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Was there any nocturnal awakening due to breathing problems?
No.
And it indicates again that she's been using her bronchodilator infrequently.
Correct.
Okay. Is some of this a carryover too?
Yes, the rest of the details carry over, yeah.
And under HENT, I think we have some carryover here as well.
Nothing's changed.
Under HENT, it indicates, quote, current symptoms include minimal upper respiratory problems now, end quote.
Now, that's the current report, and the rest is carryover.
All right. And what's the significance of minimal upper respiratory problems now?
Means her nose or allergic rhinitis is doing well.
Okay. And skin, again, it looks like that's a carryover.
Correct.
Under MSK there, do you see musculoskeletal?
Yes.
Would this have been per patient report?
Correct.
All right. Pain in her legs for the past 2 years, now in a wheelchair, end quote. All right. She'd been diagnosed with RSD or regional pain disorder. Do you hold yourself out as someone with a special expertise or knowledge of complex regional pain syndrome?
Not at all.
Do you know what it is?
No.
What were her vital signs on this day?
Peak flow rate was 250. Her weight was, we must not have weighters in the wheelchair. Her blood pressure was 120 over 80, heart rate 100, respiratory rate 20.
Are any of those outside of normal limits?
No.
Blood pressure, significance of that?
Blood pressure is normal.
And then respiratory rate?
That's normal.
And then you did a physical examination on this day too?
Correct.
And that's something you physically and personally would have done?
Right.
You indicated the patient was, quote, pleasant, correct?
Yes.
And again, you said that she was NAD, correct?
Right.
And what does NAD stand for?
No apparent distress.
Did you notice anything abnormal with her eyes?
No.
What about her ears?
Nope.
What about her nose?
Normal nose, normal sinuses, oral cavity.
Oral cavity was normal?
Normal.
What about the neck?
Neck, heart rate, rhythm is normal, and lungs were clear, skin was clear without rash.
What is the significance of a finding the lungs are clear bilaterally?
Just there's no obstruction of the airway, no abnormal lung sounds that would bring attention to a lung condition.
And you note here skin, quote, clear without rash, end quote. Do you see that?
Yes.
What's the significance of that finding?
Their eczema was not active.
All right. And if you had noticed active eczema, is that something that you would have documented?
Yes.
And that's something that, as an immunologist and allergist, you
keep an eye on.
You keep an eye on because allergies often present on the skin.
Exactly.
And you note under allergic rhinitis treatment, quote, this is the first time I've seen her in a few years, end quote, correct?
Yes.
And you had recommended for more frequent follow-ups than 20 months, correct?
Yeah.
All right. Quote, she remains on a lot of meds despite doing so well, end quote. Do you see that?
Yes.
What's the significance of that entry?
Her nose actually done very well, and maybe not doing shots is totally fine because she's doing so well. And at the same time, she might not need medication, so
okay.
We try to back off when people are doing well.
And you indicated, quote, let's cut back on Claritin and the nose sprays, end quote?
Right.
What was that a reference to? What specific medications were you referencing we should cut back on?
Those two, Claritin, which is the antihistamine, and Flonase, which is the nose spray.
Okay. Asthma, mild, intermittent. Quote, she should also try cutting back meds here too, end quote, correct?
Right, yes.
You see, why did you recommend that Maya should also try cutting back on meds here too?
Well, just like when people are bad, we add medications. When people are well, we see if things can be cut back. So it would just be a time to see if the asthma improves and you go off it.
And what medication specifically you were referencing here that she should try to cut back on?
The inhaled steroid Flovent.
Any other ones?
No.
Okay. And then under atopic dermatitis, also known as eczema, you indicate here, quote, her skin is doing well, end quote. You see just the residual hypopigmentation, correct?
Yep.
And that was the same hypopigmentation we talked about from back in 2015?
Yes.
And you noted that her skin was doing well. What's the significance of that entry?
Just to demonstrate that it was not active and did need to be addressed further.
And what was your recommended follow-up plan here?
Probably as needed. I don't know what I said. 1 year.
1 year. To the best of your knowledge, was there ever any other follow-up with Maya Kowalski?
No.
To your knowledge, is she still treating with you?
No.
To the best of your knowledge, based on your review of Exhibit 3, what was the action plan for Maya Kowalski with respect to prednisone and her asthma flare-ups as of June of 2015?
It's in number 4, their plan. And they should immediately dose her with prednisone 60, then provide 8 puffs of albuterol or 2 vials of the nebulizer and give us a call.
And that is if she, quote, falls into the red zone, end quote?
Correct, yeah.
What, to the best of your knowledge, what does that mean, the red zone?
Well, you get someone's baseline peak expiratory flow rate on the peak flow meter, and then you do percentage drops. So the first drop is 20% would be green zone. That's okay. You can be within 20%. If you're 20 to 40, it's yellow. If you're below 40% lower than normal, you're in a red zone or danger zone.
So, to the best of your recollection and knowledge here, prednisone was to only be given if the patient was in a red zone?
Correct.
Prednisone would not be given if the patient was in a green zone?
Correct.
What was the other zone that was referenced?
Well, it's green, yellow, and red.
But based on your knowledge of the action plan, which color would correspond with prednisone use?
Red.
To the best of your knowledge, does prednisone use correlate with being in the yellow zone?
No.
Does prednisone use correlate with being in the green zone?
No.
Okay. So this was not daily, this was not a recommendation for daily prednisone use?
Correct.
Going back to physical examination on page 2, I'd like to go through the physical examination that was done on June 23, 2015, and ask you a few questions, okay?
Sure.
Indicates here that the patient's heart rate was 86. Do you see that?
Yes.
Is that within normal limits for a patient like Maya Kowalski?
Sure, sure.
Respirations were 20. Is that also within normal limits for a patient like Maya Kowalski?
Yes.
Oxygen saturations were 98% on room air. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
What is the significance of oxygen saturations at 98% on room air?
Normal.
Normal. Would that qualify for being in a red zone?
No.
Under general appearance, it's documented that she is, quote, healthy, well-nourished, polite, cooperative, and in no distress, end quote. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then under skin, it indicates, quote, warm, dry, intact, no rash or breakdown, end quote. Do you see that?
Correct.
To the best of your knowledge, was that more or less, does that more or less comport with your findings from June 24 of 2015?
Yes.
Does that comport with your findings on subsequent follow-up visits with Maya Kowalski as documented in your chart?
Yeah.
At any point, did you see any symptoms of rash when you were treating the patient?
No, just the hypopigmentation.
And you would have documented rash if in fact it did present?
I should have.
Okay. And under lungs, it indicates clear bilaterally without wheeze, bronchi, or crackles. Do you see that?
Yes.
And what is the significance of clear bilateral lung findings?
Normal the lungs seem to appear to be normal at that moment.
And did that comport with your findings on June 24, 2015?
Yes.
Did that comport with your findings in subsequent office visits as documented in your chart?
Yes.
Okay. What is a wheeze?
It's an indication of bronchoconstriction there in the airways. You hear air going through a small caliber bronchial tube.
Did you ever personally observe that while you were treating Maya Kowalski?
No.
And bronchi, what is that?
It's another breath sound that indicates some inflammation of the airway or crackles, same thing.
Did you ever see that
No.
during your course of treatment with Maya Kowalski?
No.
And what are crackles?
Another indicator of either bronchitis or some sort of mucus in the airway.
Did you ever document or observe crackles while you were
No.
caring for Maya Kowalski?
Nope.
That's a no. Now, it looks like on June 23, 2015, there was also some pulmonary function tests that were done, correct?
Yes.
What were the results of the pulmonary function testing?
They were normal.
Normal. What is an FVC of 97%?
It's forced vital capacity. It's the capacity to empty your airways, and you look at predicted levels for your age and height, and she's anything over 80% is normal, and she's well above that.
She's at 97%, correct?
Yes.
FEV1 of 107%. What is that?
That's the amount of air she can express in the first second of her expiratory phase.
And what are the normal limits for a patient like Maya Kowalski?
Over 80%.
And she is at 107%?
Correct.
What is the next entry, FV1
That's the ratio. The ratio of those two numbers.
And that's 100% correct?
Yes.
What's the clinical significance of that to you?
That's normal.
And then there's an FEF 25 to 75 of 120%. What is that?
That's your mid-flow rate, the 25 to 75% part of your total blowing, and like small airways, ability to empty air, and she did very well, 120% of normal.
What is the normal reference range for that test?
Over 80.
And she's at 120%?
Yes.
And it indicates here that all of the prior tests we were talking about represent, quote, normal spirometry input. You see that?
Yes.
What is the significance of that finding?
Good. She had a very normal test that day.
When you treated with Maya Kowalski throughout 2015 and then later in 2017, did you ever notice any abnormal spirometry?
Well, we never did one, and this is the only one I saw, so this is a snapshot in time.
Okay. You never did any pulmonary function
No,
testing?
no.
Based on your physical examination, though, did you notice any type of pulmonary issues while you were treating Maya Kowalski?
No.
You
Correct.
made some recommendations regarding allergy management, right?
Right.
What were those?
To start allergy shots.
Were those followed?
No.
You walked us through your 3 encounters with Maya, is that right?
Right.
Okay. And I believe you told us early on in your deposition that you don't have an independent recollection of her or
Correct.
or mom, is that right?
Mhm.
Okay. On any of your 3 encounters with Maya, the patient, did you identify her or find her to be in the red zone?
Breathing, no.
Okay.
Dr. I'm Greg Anderson. I represent the Kowalskis.
the two visits you had, leaving out the 2017 visit, were prior to July 4th, 2015, which is documented as the onset of the CRPS symptoms, right? During the visits you saw, you never made a diagnosis or notations of any psychiatric or psychological issues or problems with anyone in this family, did you?
No.
And not with the child herself?
No.
Would that be correct?
Right.
Did you receive a call from anyone, any of the pediatricians at JHATCH, Johns Hopkins Old Children's Hospital, asking you about your interaction with the family?
No.
Hey, members of the jury, I think this is going to be a good time for us to take lunch. Have them back at 1:30. As a reminder, we're going to be leaving today around 4-ish, okay? Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves, do not do any investigation, and receive no information, and have a good lunch.
All rise for executive.
Okay, the jury's out of our presence. Is there anything we need to address before we leave for lunch?
No, Judge, it'd be nice to address the rest of the exhibits when we come back, if it's possible.
How much more time do you think you need for the exhibits?
15 minutes.
So should we just come back at 1:10 as opposed to 1:15 to give us time to do the exhibits and then address the rehearing and anything else that we need to do?
That'd be great, Judge.
So 1:10 it is. See you after lunch.
Do you want the breakdown now?
Oh, yeah, sure, if you got it.
O'Leary Johnson, defense 32 minutes, plaintiff 1 minute.
Okay.
Every minute counts.
We round up to 5 on that?
Well, honestly, on Dr. Alexander, you were at 19.